Anybody wants a mint? I've got mint here. I haven't seen.
Live and exclusive team, so welcome back once again. I've got an apology from Councillor McCosty for latency. I'll move it and someone please second it. Councillor Wheeler. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I suppose I still have to do declarations of interest, and is there any additional information or urgent matters that you want to bring to the table?
Just, Your Worship, just make the advise council that possibly tomorrow we might have a late item for the submission approval, if we can write it in time for the new bill in front of the government for local water done well, and that deadline is I think it's tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So we haven't got the item to approve, but there'll be a late item request for approval if we've written it in time.
Thank you. Councillor Payne, followed by Ludeman.
Well, I'll just declare my interest with the diploma. I'll be standing down from many discussions with that today, if that falls today.
You were
possibly I have a small interest as far as family is concerned with Kahuiaka as well. My wife being one of the principals that's in the group, so we'll take some advice on that one. Other than that, I think I might be right.
No, the wife on the group ones you removed, fair enough from that one, Kim, but thanks for your declaration. Councillor Ludeman.
Interest with Booth Foundations.
Foundation. Any further declarations of interest, Councillor Wheeler?
Project Charitable Trust trustees submitted.
And I should actually make my declaration for Women's Refuge.
Yep.
So I'll move those declarations, seconded by Councillor Finch. All those in favour? Those against? Now I also have to, because we're going over time, I've got to move a recommendation that the council agrees to extend the duration of the LTP decision meeting today to enable all business to be completed. We're going to scoot over it. So move Councillor Finch, seconded Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, just a question on that. How we're attempting to conclude business today, or
No.
And what time are we going to?
5. But that still takes it past the 6 hours.
Okay, I'm happy to see.
So Councillor Finch, Councillor Wheeler, all those in favour?
Right.
Those against? Now, just a sort of a procedural matter, just so that you know what I'm doing for all the day. Every single recommendation I'll take individually, and when I do, I have to go, and this is for Julie's sake, I have to go those 4 councillors, those against councillors, has anyone abstained? So that we can pause the against and the abstains, because I've been doing it too quickly for Julie. So, and can anyone pull me into line if I'm starting to drift back into my old ways? Right, yeah. Once again, thank you, team, for coming to what will be an incredibly important day for the council. We'll move straight into agenda item number 1. Pretty simple one. The easy one to warm us up for the day, which is just the approval of the minutes from the 23rd to 28th. So one put there. I'll get Councillor Payne's move. Councillor Herbert will second it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? So the vote's unanimous. I'll do it that way to see if there is a unanimous and then do the split looking like it. Sorry, team. Yeah. Next page. Sorry. Righto. Another couple of simple ones that we first received the feedback and submissions listed, and then approve later on list feedback and submissions as listed.
Sorry, Your Worship. Julie,
Through Your
there's
Worship,
a slight change.
there is that second recommendation will have, with the addition of Dale Taipiti as circulated. I believe you all got that one last night, was one that was completely missed.
Yes.
I've just amended that recommendation to include his name. for a name.
So I break the rules right at the start and do two, but these are procedural, those first couple. So moved councillor Finch, seconded councillor Herbert. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. So unanimous. On to number 3. Managing rating impacts. Is Sharon here? Does she wish to speak? Where? Well done.
Yeah, so your worship, just for the introduction, how the report works, and also how we're working with Sharon's team. Like, we'll set them up with the microphone so that they don't have to keep coming to the front all the time. It just means that any item where there's a financial input, they can answer from down the back. And the reason why they're down the back is that the way that we manage the process is that Sharon has a spreadsheet of the starting position, and as we work our way through decisions from resolutions that you provide today and tomorrow, that starting position's amended, and she can keep us informed of the rating impacts of those decisions, and that's how the report is written, as managing rating impacts. The report stays open, so you resolve resolutions 1 and 2, and the rest of the report, I think including the borrowing side of it, can stay to the end. You make those final resolutions towards the end of the process after you have completed all your decisions, because you're effectively resolving on the final rates impact as a result. So the report stays open for that process. But otherwise, that's how we manage it, councillors and your worship. And Sharon, if you wanted to add anything more.
Just before we do go to Sharon, you're ducked in behind there. I won't see you. If you have something you want, you're going to have to do. Yep, that's the one. Also, Sharon, as we're going through the day, is there going to be a screen that will show us the running totals?
Not at this point, just because I need a really wide one because we've got 10 years, but we can stop at any point and check on that.
If there's a fundamental change, oh, that made a big difference. Can you make sure that we know? Thank you. Sorry, any further questions for Sharon just before we...
The other thing we're hoping, your worship, is to actually go into the system and run an overnight change, so that when you come in the morning, we can show you a new set based on decisions that have already been taken. So we'll get that as well. And what we will try to do, either it's morning tea or lunchtime, is find a way to show. We've done it before. Just got to technically find the answer again. Show what we can in a screen for you, your worship, as we go along.
Questions, then, Councillor Barron.
Through you, then, Mr. Mayor. Sharon, for clarification, in the long-term plan under rates reality, it says the only options we had available to us was to borrow in years 1 and 2 to repay this money in later years of the long-term plan. This resulted in rate increases around 20% for the first 3 years. See graph below. So the graph option 2 has 20.97, 14.4. I'm assuming that relates to those option 2 rates figures.
Through you, Your Worship, that is correct.
Now, in the document that we just picked up on Monday, it says the starting point of council's preferred consultation option is to use 7.43 million of debt in year 1 to make the needed rates revenue rise more affordable. So in option 1, year 1 was 47.5. So does a 7.43 million in debt bring it down to 20.97?
Correct.
If you extrapolate that out and go from 47.5 to 20.97, and then say, let's go from 20.97 to 15% rates rise, it would mean debt of another 1.67 million. Would I be correct in saying that?
I'm unsure without trying it.
But the principle, the principle you're describing is correct.
Is correct. So by adding 1.67 million to the debt of 7.3, we could get the rates down to 15% based on what we've got in front of us right at the moment.
So Sharon, possibly, because you know how we used to always have it, urban legend, 250,000 was 1% of rates, and I think it's about 330 now. It might help Councillor Barron if he knew that for every time we made a decision, every 330 is 1%. It's a bit
70.
dangerous to do it because then is it UAGC? Is it Milton community only? Is it you can get thrown out, but as a general rule, it's one.
You wish to share an updated that at 370.
370 now. We're heading for the sky. 370, right up. So every 370,000 as a rule of thumb is 1%.
Okay, so one more question, which I'm not sure if now's the time to ask, but you can tell me. In this document, there's carryover debt of 9 million for projects underway. There's 691,000 for computers, and there's 5 million for Greenfields water, and so on and so forth. Are they in any of the long-term plan figures, or are they got to be added to the long-term?
Through you, Your Worship, they will be starting to be repaid in year 1 of the long-term plan. So by carrying them forward, you push them out to year 2. So the carry forwards will also have an impact. They will push rates forward from you. If we've budgeted to spend that money this year and raise that debt, so we've budgeted to rate for it next year, year 1 of the long-term plan. And if we carry it forward, then we'll be budgeting to spend it in year 2.
Every decision paper that you have on any of those items will need to address the question as to, is it included already in what was consulted on? Is it additional to what was consulted on? Plus or minus. So sometimes they can be a positive reduction. Sometimes it's a negative increase.
We'll go through that as we go through.
And that's the intent of the paper, is that you will absolutely know when you're making the calls, is this something that's already was included and consulted on and the consequences, or is this something additional that you have to bear in mind as well?
And there is a trick, Councillor Barron, on how we've taken on the debt to get us down to 20.97. You said carry forward for the Greenfield boards 5.5. It's not a carry forward, it's an addition. So that's not counted anywhere in here, that's an addition. But you don't go 5.5,300,000 because the 5.5 will be loaned. So it's the cost of the loan which it drops it. It's not, don't use the 5.5 million divided by 370,000 because we're not paying it off all in one hit. We're paying it off over 30 years. There's a few tricks to where you extract it out. Was it you, Kenny, or someone up there? John, sorry.
So for our recommendation 3 in here, about confirming the borrowing, can someone remind me, it's probably in here, there was a question in our consultation document about paying the 47% up front or loan funding. So are the results of that survey question, are they in this document somewhere? I just don't recall reading.
Where's Cara?
No.
That there was, I can remember one person or two said, yeah, let's do the 41. I don't
further on, it tells us all the
yeah.
results of the thing, but I'm just not. I might have read it, but I'm not sure if I've read it. But at least everyone has. But is it? I mean, I know which way it is, but what are the figures?
Sorry, I don't. I've never seen that, so
I didn't see.
So Sharon, just one other figure. We've ascertained what the 20.97 is, but we haven't stated. Where is our starting figure today for debt? Is it still 106?
Through you, Worship, it is currently, no, it's a wee bit, it was 111, I think, but that will change based on all the decisions you make today as well.
Yep, just the starting.
And Councillor Herbert, I have those numbers here. They didn't make it to the report, unfortunately. There was 48. There was 9% that wanted a higher rate increase in year 1, and there was 90.99 that wanted it to be spread over the first 3 years.
What was that over the 3 years? Sorry, Sharon.
90.99.
90.99.
9.01.
Reasonably conclusive.
Straight up.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sorry.
Okay, any more questions for Sharon just before we head on into the spiky end of the recommendation? If not, we'll go to number 1, which is easy. We received the report. I'll move it. Who's seconded? Seconded, Councillor Catherwood. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. The second one is the, as you see there, 20.97. Matters open for discussion, Tim. If there is no discussion, is someone prepared to move it?
I'm happy to move that. It's just a starting point at the moment, so we'll see where we end up.
Move Councillor Volwella, seconded Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
And we'll leave off with 3.
How come?
Well, because you might decide at the end you won't use TED to keep rates down. So it's just that it would be done towards the end when you're making final decisions.
Because I have got those ones. So I thought we were confirming the opening borrowing amount, and then these ones that are ripped out at the end of the meeting, we confirm the rates, the overall rate increase. And then
Quite right, Your Worship, but I was just saying that Resolution 3 suggests there might be debate about whether you use or not use, and yet you haven't done any of the other decisions to determine what that final figure is anyway. So,
Yeah, the final figure, but
so it makes no difference and suggests there's no reason to make that resolution at this point. You can wait till later.
gives a minute for me to think about it. Yeah, well, that's going to get spilt out through the day.
So-
Councillor Lou.
Well, so therefore, at this stage, as we make our decisions, we actually haven't agreed to use any of the investment surplus. So, I mean, I would think if we'd agreed to use some of the investment surplus, it may, be, I mean, obviously, especially if we want to offset some of our decisions off investment surplus, if we don't now move to do at least a certain amount, how can we be actually moving to use our investment surplus as we go through the meeting?
Sorry, through Your Worship, that's got nothing to do with Resolution 3, which is about borrowing.
Yeah, no, I'm probably down at
There isn't.
at resolution 4.
Yeah, so-
Sorry, I've ripped them out, Alan. Can everyone please remind me at the end of the meeting that I've got to go back to those ones? At the end of the whatever.
Your Worship, I mean, we have tried to put the sequence of decision making in a way that's logical for when you would, make those calls. So within the agenda order paper, there's a particular place where the investment surplus is being decided. Now, that's not first. There are other things that come ahead of that, which is around things like the carry forwards and other bits and pieces that you have to deal with, because that has direct impacts on the bottom line. And then there's a point for investment surplus, because you need to have that investment surplus decision before you kick into what we have described as discretionary decision making.
Absolutely, that's kind of the comment I was making, that, okay, we've got a chance to do it.
Councillor Payne.
Your Worship, look, I'm just looking at that number 3, and I just think, wondering whether it's a one-word thing. Maybe it's just that council confirms the option of using borrowing keep rates under the limit. See it? Would that?
Yeah, well, I'll go with that because it's inevitable that we do. We already have and we already are.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to take that recommendation.
Well, I'm happy to move that.
Did you get that, Julie? Someone prepared to second it? Councillor Ludeman, any discussion? Put to the vote, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Thank you. Move over to page 56, where we're just confirming that we still support the living and working strategies currently.
No, Your Worship, we'll just take that as read, and if there's any questions, it is only producing what was what came out of the consultation in terms of analytics, and that's all it is.
Happy to move.
Hold on, I'll take one at a time, or I'm going to start breaking my I'll get stuffed up from here on in basically. So the first one I'll do is that we just received the report. You're moving, councillor Finch?
Yes.
Thank you, seconded by councillor Herbert. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, and then confirming the living and strategy. Move councillor Payne, seconded councillor Wheeler. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against. Sorry for the pedanticness, but if I get into the flow of it, it'll make sense at the end when we get into those meaty ones. Page 61's got,
They're similar, but for the infrastructure. And I'll add a few issues.
don't do that to me later on in the day, eh? So please have it noted, councillor Ludeman's left the meeting. Infrastructure, once again, pretty straightforward, so I'll move the report. Someone second, please. Councillor Finch, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, and also that we confirm infrastructure strategy. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Herbert, seconded by councillor Phelps. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? I saw you move on, Phelps, so that was good enough for me and under the circumstances. Rightio, capital works program on page 66. We'll do this. Donna, welcome, Donna.
I'm going to do this one, Donna. So, through you, Your Worship, this one was, in the past, we've brought up carry forwards. That was the completeness of the carry forwards. This time round, we've actually split them up into two stages. So this first stage of carry forwards are projects that are underway or we're already committed to. There are other carry forwards that we think need to be considered as part of the forward works program that come up later on. And there is actually an additional carry forwards in the Donna, if you want to mention that.
Good morning, everyone. So through you, Worship, we omitted to include the Richardson South Purua Main Reservoir Upgrade Project. It has a total project budget of $846,000, which was for this financial year. Due to delays in materials, we're actually requesting to carry forward $391,000 into next financial year to complete the project.
And also through you, Your Worship, the question before about the rates impact of these, in a ballpark figure, $9 million of work that was scheduled to be carried out this year. There's about $640,000 of rate funding would have been required to fund that capital. So as we said before, with these loans being raised next year, that will move that rating requirement from year one of the LTP into year two of the LTP.
But seeing that carry forwards, it's already in the baseline.
It is, but we won't be raising those loans. These carry forward amounts won't be raised this year. They'll be raised next year instead. And we rate the year after we've raised the loan value.
So let me just get it right in my head. The 20.97 doesn't change. The rate doesn't change, but the year of debt and when we take on the debt changes.
The rate requirement, yes, but the rate requirement will change. It's about 1.7% reduction in 1.8 if we use the 370k. So just wanting to clarify that when you're making this decision, that will move that rating requirement from year one to year two.
But the overall rate, it's already been put in it. So technically, whether it happens this year or next year, it has been accounted for. So
it'll just be a year later because we're not going to be raising these loans this financial year. So and that's why Sharon will be keeping track of this, and she'll do an update overnight and bring back the changed position as a result of the decisions you make.
So our voting for this, let's just say hypothetically we said yes, will not change the 20.97 starting point. It does.
Yeah.
It reduces it, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Because-
1.7 or 1.8.
So it adds it for next year.
But so there's one minute that swings and
Change
swings.
the time.
So sorry, I'll go to Councillor Payne who's had his hand up and then Councillor Bowyer.
So I'm just trying to be clear on this myself. So what does it mean to the following year that the forecast 24 is incrementally going to go up?
It'll go up by that amount.
Right. So we need to have a fair.
But there's going to be lots of other decisions you make during the day that will change that as well. So it's just this individual decision will move about 1.8% of rates that would have had to have been funded next year to the year after.
No, that's what I thought. So that's cool.
Yeah, one number, Councillor Bowyer.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship, there were a lot of figures just thrown about then, and I was trying to just keep track of them and make a note of them. So the rating impact was of that 9 million less expenditure.
So on our current loan calcs, and I just rounded it to 9 million, I didn't do 9.4, it works out at about, like, interest and principal repayments on that work at about $655,000.
Sorry,
655K.
655.
So that's the impact of $9 million worth of capital work is interest and principal repayments.
Okay, and I'll just make a note of that, another question as well. And just what was the carry forward for the Richardson scheme again? Sorry.
Through you, Chair, $390,660. So I just rounded up to 391,000.
So that takes that figure of 9438 basically up to 98, roughly 98.
9828, correct.
Sorry, Councillor Phelps followed by Ludeman Phillips. I'll roll that back because in fairness to Dane, he did have his hand up. Councillor Catherwood Phelps, Ludeman.
Through you, Your Worship. So these figures, these carry forward figures, how concrete are these actual figures with escalations? Because the projects are underway, but are they actually figures? Are we going to see escalations? Obviously, a lot of water upgrades.
Through you, Your Worship. So these figures are the balance remaining of the already approved budget values for each of these individual projects. These projects have been tendered and we've got contractual tendered rates. So unless there's any unforeseen variation requirements, which is like crystal ball glazing, correct, these are the figures. But I can't talk about future discoverables along the way.
Councillor Phelps.
Thanks for the chair. My question's been answered. Thank you.
Councillor Ludeman.
I don't know whether I've got this wrong. So by pushing these out, carrying these forward, that means they're not being done in this financial year, this next financial year.
Correct, they won't be completed by the 30th of June 2024 this year. So we're saying that and the majority of them will be completed by July, August, if you approve the funds to be carried forward into next financial year. So we're talking to June 30th of June 2024 is the end of our current financial year with the budgets. And this work if you give approval to continue and complete, we're wanting to utilise these funds from the 1st of July through till most of them will be completed by July, August.
24, but because they're in the next financial year, we're not rating them till the following financial
Correct.
year. Okay. Yeah.
So that year one
Yeah.
is affected and then
Yeah.
year two is affected.
So through Your Worship, as Sharon has pointed out via email to me, the loan repayments are already in year two, but the percentage change is still going to happen because we aren't rating for them in year one. So Sharon might want to explain that. It's difficult to
If it's a 25-year loan or whatever,
shift it a year.
it's always going to be the same amount for each year, isn't it? It's already in year two, so that doesn't change as a consequence. It's just another year outside it. So actually, it does have an impact, but not a rating impact per se, because you're already going to be paying for it.
So it was always going to be there in year two, so it's there. Quite tricky going through it, but I think we've got the hang of it, team, have we? Councillor Martin.
Donna, through you, Your Worship. So the value here, the figure, by carrying it forward, there's going to be no surprises. Like the suppliers are going to come back and say, oh, after 12 months down the track, the costs have gone up again.
Through you, Your Worship. So the projects where the materials have already been purchased, they've already been purchased. That it is what it is. The costs have already come in. What I was alluding to prior is that as we progress through the project, like with any project or any piece of work that you do, there may be slight variations or discoverables along the way, but that's real crystal balling. At this point in time, these are the known costs captured within the budget requirements.
we can't foresee, for example, when we were working on the Milton Main Street with the archaeological finds, those are delays which can cause cost variations potentially. It's those sort of crystal balling aspects that I can't answer at this point in time, but we do definitely escalate it once we're aware of it. But this is what we're asking for today.
Through you, Your Worship, just to assist, Donna, in this particular instance, all these carry forward projects they're proposing, are there any contracts yet to be let or tendered for any of those projects?
No, these are already contracted. We contractually have awarded and obligated.
Yeah, so where we have the most significant risks is if we've got a multi-year project that you've got elements of it that the contracts haven't yet been let or tendered, you've got a higher risk that the budgets won't be sufficient or we impact it. Where we've let the tendered contracts, then there's still project risk, but that's generally associated with things that show, where you are going with the project in terms of variations. And so you wouldn't ever guarantee that you would be able to meet exactly that, but you would be saying the risk is significantly reduced from a variation where you haven't scoped it or you haven't let it out or you haven't tendered it. You'd have to say there's high risk associated with that.
Yeah. Oh, no, thank you for clarifying that, Steve. So, yeah, but there will be some grey areas, but you're not expecting catastrophic.
Not at this point in time, no.
Thank you.
I was just happy to move recommendation 1, Your Worship, if you would really take it.
I'm happy to take that one. I'll second it. All those in favour? Those against? Now I'll just go to Councillor Finch's.
So what percentage of variation, in case you come across issues, is there in those contracts?
Oh, look, that's crystal balling. I mean, we have contingency within all projects, and we really monitor and watch those. What I can give confidence on is that there's delegated authoritative values within the team. So anything that gets greater than the project manager's delegation value gets escalated to myself. If it gets greater than mine, which is quite a significant value, I actually always do advise Jules and Steve once we get to that higher variation value also. So we have the procurement and the financial delegation protocols in place.
Yes. Thank you.
So we're at the point of business as usual. The tenders are let, but there'll be contingencies, there'll be variations. Same old. Any further questions? Sorry. Councillor Barron.
Through you, the Hospital Creek embankment's got a yellow line through it. Is that because you're going to recoup that money from ORC?
I think it was just accidentally included in the snippet like this. Most of that work has been completed though, and we are able to get some of the revenue back in, correct?
Through you, Your Worship, I highlighted that, Councillor Barron, because I thought it was finished. There's actually further work to be done to raise the last bit of the flood bank to make sure, the stormwater embankment. So that's why this is still here. I was thinking, isn't this finished? I thought we were done, but we actually have a wee bit more work to do.
I look at it every morning. Defies belief.
If there are no further questions, team, into general discussion on recommendation number 2.
I'm happy to move the recommendation 2 that council approves the proposed budget and with the amendment of the Richardson Pool.
Richardson South.
The
So everyone knows what
Richardson South.
Bruce is voting on. We're approving it, and then Donna said at the start that 846 with the 390. We need a second to Councillor Herbert. Any further discussion? Put to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Over to page 69, land transport. Chris.
So, through you, Your Worship, we'll probably have Chris to answer any questions, but this is one that has been put together as an option for you to consider after discussion with Steve and myself. So we'll keep Chris here available to answer any questions, and we'll just run you through it. So one of the issues we've always had at the start of our 3-year National Land Transport Program is uncertainty over the level of funding we're going to receive. And we have that same issue this time round. It's not until late August, early September when we're going to get confirmation of what level of funding we will get.
We've had an indicative indication that we'll get just shy of 60 million of the 66 we asked for, but there's still more programs to come into that are in that additional sort of 6 or 7 million. So we looked back at the last two lots of our 3-year National Land Transport Program and said, we always know we don't quite spend as much in the first year as we do in the later years. So why not look at what we've actually achieved and then bring back an option to council, say let's actually change the timing of our land transport funding, so we better reflect what we've actually done in practice. That also gives us the opportunity to not potentially overcommit rates in this first year when we don't exactly know what funding we're going to get from NZTA. So then there's the opportunity to readjust those budgets for the next 2 years once you do know what funding we've got, and we find out in September as part of the next annual plan process. So we looked at the average of the last 2 3-year land transport cycles, and it's about 15% is what we've underspent in year 1. Now, this isn't everything. This is only the rate funded categories. So things like bridges, which are funded from reserves, they don't actually affect rates. If we don't do the bridges, we don't take the money out of those bridge reserves. So this change is proposed for only those operationally funded budgets. Now, there is a risk that our roading guys get really stuck in and they get lots of work done. And we've got that risk in year 1. Potentially, we can ask NZTA, can we bring some of our future money forward? We also have our deferred roading maintenance fund. If we do need to fund our share in this first year, we can actually use that to do that, which we've done this year. We funded our share of the additional $2 million of funding out of that deferred roading maintenance fund. So we do have a backup option that isn't going to necessarily impact the rates if that has to be done this year. So this is purely an option, and we're sort of there's some rationale behind it, but it's solely a council decision whether you want to stick with our current budgets or change the timing. So yeah, happy to take any questions, and Chris is available if you need to add any more, Chris. We'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, the principle generally was we noted that the effect was basically overrating and putting money into a reserve. And in this particular climate, we were trying to find ways of not overrating or not rating where we don't need to. This was something that we identified was another potential option for you, and it's doable. And the team have done the homework, so that's the options there, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions, Tim? Councillor Martin.
Your Worship, in theory, that sounds good, but would it, an extreme weather event could blow that theory completely out the door, though, couldn't it?
If it's through Your Worship, for extreme weather events, if they meet a certain threshold, there's additional funding. We can make a supplementary claim to NZTA. So that is an option if we get a really bad weather event. If it doesn't meet that threshold, then yes, there is additional pressure on our maintenance budgets, but we have that risk every year for those less than a certain threshold event. And I think there was some consultation that we put into the last round of NZTA changing those thresholds for the emergency, and being able to make emergency claims.
No, it's just worth considering.
Can I get in my head, Jules, there was a double banger that you said right at the start. You said the 3-year program had gone from 66 million to 60. If it's over a 3-year and we only pay a proportion of it, somewhere around 1.8, is that 600,000 each year? So we're now looking at a $600,000 reduction in the roading budget every year. Is it linear like that? Have I got the figures halfway right?
So the only approval we've had is for part of the program.
Yeah.
There's still other parts of the program that they will not confirm until they've made the board have made their final decision. So we haven't been told you're getting 60 million of the 66 you asked, and that's it. I've said an interim decision is this is how much we have approved to date. We're still considering the rest of your program, and that we'll find that out. Is that September, Chris, or August?
It's probably September.
So we haven't. That's the uncertainty. And the other thing, I suppose, the other risk I would highlight is last time they gave us an interim, hey, this is what it's looking like. It actually changed significantly when they gave us the final figures. So while it's comforting, I wouldn't bet on that being the final.
So it was just to confirm, was it just a bonus top up or whatever? Then as we run the gauntlet, so to speak, on the 80% of the program rating, and primarily that's to the rural, we are all well aware of the pressures that are on the rural budget, and do we want to rate to sit it on a bank account of ours when obviously it's not in a bank account of theirs? If the 80% proved to not be enough, could we come back next year to the LTP and not have to consult, we just change, or would it trigger the significance that, hey, you're significantly altered from the LTP, we're going to go through a whole consultation to get it back up to the 100?
So for this, we're not suggesting we drop, we're just suggesting we change the timing. So we're proposing to take 15% out of next year's variable land transport or operationally funded land transport budget and put it into year 3. So we're not dropping it, we're just changing the timing until we have the certainty of what NZTA.
I thought you said you're going down to 80%, 15%.
That's a different report.
It's a different
Your
report.
worship. This is just pure transportation.
Changing of timing of transportation, rate funding and the program.
Questions to Councillor Herbert.
Thank
followed by
you, through you. And so just forgetting about the finances for a minute, Jules, and we're talking about pushing it out because it better reflects what's going on in reality, we know that. So the fundamentals that are pushing that reality, are they still in place? Like you've said in a couple of things there in the second sentence of the background about, we normally, it gets approved a bit late and we get the funding a bit late. Are those things still going to happen, do you think?
Definitely the funding and the approval is going to be in September. So when we're doing our annual plan for next year, we'll be in a position to say, this is what's been approved. How are we now going to spread that budget over the next 2 years?
So the reasons that it's happened the last couple of, periods are still there.
Oh, they are for the funding side. Our maintenance guys are geared up, so they're geared up to do the work. So that's the risk side of it, is that they come back to us and say, no, we're doing the work, but they may not get that budget. So that might have to be trimmed back depending on the NZTA approval anyway. And at this stage, we just don't have that confirmation.
Councillor Campbell.
Through you, Worship. So I'm just a little bit more insight into this. It should be noted that the current balance of the deferred roading maintenance fund amounts to approximately 1.8. How does that clarify that a bit more?
Yeah, so in the past, one of the reasons we have a deferred roading maintenance fund is for exactly this reason previously. In a previous LTP, I think it was about 9 years ago, Sharon, if you correct me, we went out and rated for what we were hoping to get from our National Land Transport program. We got the decision in September and they said, no, we've cut you back to what you got for the past 3 years. Sorry about that. You're not going to get any more. So we had actually overrated by, might have been $400,000 or $500,000. So the council at that stage said, well, we know we're not doing the maintenance we need to do. We're going to put that in a deferred roading maintenance fund. And that's actually where that fund started. And that for various reasons, for other bits and pieces, other fund amounts have gone into that since then. So, it has been really useful when we have had additional funding available to do more maintenance that we don't have to go and tap into rates. We've taken it out of that deferred roading maintenance fund. So Sharon might have a bit more info as to what's gone in since then.
So where does that 1.8 million sit on the balance sheet now?
It's in a roading deferred maintenance fund. If you look in the reserve schedule, it's in there with a balance.
Further questions for Councillor Park?
Thanks, Your Worship, and probably one for Chris, perhaps. I'm just thinking, we've had quite a lot of feedback about footpaths and all that throughout the consultation, and I'm just wondering how we reduce this, but how have we've got the ability to weight the work plan any way we like. So if we decided to do footpaths or roading or whatever, we could mix it as we wish.
There are limitations on that, and you can't just mix and match. And specifically, footpaths is one area they haven't approved yet. They've held that back. They've held road safety. What was the other one, Chris?
Activity management planning and the low cost, low risk.
Right. So your improvement projects. So all of those. Yeah. So they haven't made decisions on those. And there is some flexibility within maintenance categories, but not between footpaths and maintenance and those sort of things.
Thank you. Further questions, Tim? If not, matters open for general discussion.
I'll
Councillor Will.
move number one that we received the.
Thank you for doing that. That's an easy one. Councillor Herbert seconding. All those in favour?
Aye.
All those against? Thank you. On to number 2.
Just noting.
Right. Yeah, we're noting it. So noted, Councillor Ludeman, seconded Councillor Martin. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's against. Thank you. Option 3, retain the draft budget. Oh, hold on. Number 3, we're going to go or. So it's 3, 4 or 5. Time for a discussion team. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, just looking at option 1 there, and it certainly aligns when you look at our strategic goals and outcomes there, community outcomes, vibrant rural towns and communities, key priority areas, health, safety communities, and invested in infrastructure. So my personal opinion is that option 1 would allow us to continue to achieve our strategic goals and outcomes, because in our rural communities, our roads are first and foremost means of connection.
So I said a wee bit different, Councillor Martin, the fact that in this environment, primarily we're taking it off the rural, not to do additional work, because our partner, NZTA, says no. So all we'll be doing is putting it in an account. And maybe this year it might be better in their account than our accounts.
And if just for turn around and say, no, that's it, we can't maintain, can't afford to maintain the rural roads, well.
When NZTA says no, the only decision we have is that we go non-subsidised.
Through your worship, but just for clarification, I think the council's not looking at it. We're assuming the wrong thing about what the options are. The program is still a program. We're still delivering. It's a 3-year program. We're to deliver over the 3 years the program. Yes, we don't know what the NZTA will actually ultimately give us, and we don't know that until September. It's always the case. And then and we don't have much choice about that when they do give it to us, right? The issue we've always found, though, is that we've always rated it over the 3 years equally, and we've always found a problem in year 1. We've struggled to deliver necessarily the program anyway, because by the time you get moving on it, and historically in the past, we've always looked at ourselves as over 3 years, and we've tended to be doing more work towards the end of the program than we certainly in the first few months. That's one thing. And then secondly, where they have reduced the rate, the funding, it's meant we've absolutely overrated in year 1, because we can't adjust that rating. In year 1, you already made the decision. And so what we're trying to reflect is just that issue. It's still to do the program of whatever gets approved over 3 years. So we're meeting all our requirements, but it's just reflecting that we are suggesting that you might not want to overrate in year 1 if you had a choice not to overrate.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Dagan, I know there's other questions, but just for the new councillors, you alluded to it, but about 85% of our roading rating comes from the rural area. So the 900K that would be deferred for this one would be mostly reduced in the rural area, and then would be rated for, if it all gets approved, to be rated for in year 3 in the rural area. 85%.
So it'll get removed from the rural component of the rate increase.
Well, year 1, but move to year 3.
And move to year 3.
If you go for option 2.
Can I also have it noted that Councillor McCrosty is alive, which I'm very pleased to see, because now we're going to nod numbers. It won't be a casting vote.
Actually, that clarification, Jules, is quite good, because it doesn't mention the rural component here anywhere in the recommendations.
Well, no, because it's roading rates, and that's why I was just clarifying that the way we rate our roading is just about 85% falls in the rural area.
Councillor Finch, followed by Bill Wheeler.
So I would really be going for option 2 to defer 15%, the 891, because then we're not going to be overrating. And I don't think in this environment we should be, and that's really helpful of staff. Thank you, going through and doing that exercise so we can see that. And so that will help make a difference to the rating impact, but still get approved and done, but moving it to years 3 for the rating. And so for that reason, I'll definitely be backing option 2.
Councillor Dowella, followed by Graham.
I was thinking slightly differently to Councillor Finch there, in that perhaps we defer just 10% of it for this year. So as staff have explained, our staff have the roading program well sorted, so we can carry on with that work. So there's no holdings there, and they're not under pressure to cut budgets and delay work at all. I acknowledge that we probably do underspend in year 1 of the plan. Also, if we cut it by 15% when we reintroduce it again in later years, that means a bigger percentage increase. And I was looking, while this impacts mainly rural, I was looking at rural rates from the year 2020 to 2021 to this proposed rates increases for this coming year. Rural rates are actually only going up, the examples that I was looking at, by overall 9 to 10% over those 4 or 5 years. So there's some significant decreases in that time too. So I would favour 10%.
So Councillor Graham, followed by Barron.
Through the chair, so the percentage that we historically don't use is, did I miss that?
It's varied. So we looked at the last 3 year. Chris did some good work. We looked at the last 3 year land transport programs. One was 18% and one was 12%. So it would averaged out at 15. That's why we sort of used an average of the last 2-3 year cycles.
I suggest that maybe option 2 is probably the better option.
Councillor Barron.
Thank you. My comment was on Councillor Martin's opening comments about the vibrant community, blah, 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 which is in our living and working in Clutha. But we've seen from all the submissions that have come in from the ratepayers that there's an overwhelming want to reduce costs, And while those items are still important and part of the plan, I think we need to focus on this long-term plan on reducing on the financial side of it rather than the vibrant community side of it, etc. And we're not talking about getting rid of anything, we're just talking about reducing, and everyone needs to take a wee bit in this instance.
Councillor
McTamaney.
Simon.
Can I ask 2 questions on that deferred roading maintenance fund? The first one is that of that 1.8 million, has it been, as the monies have gone in, has it been split between rural and urban rates? Just the general fund?
No, we rate district-wide,
Yep.
and we also rate in a local roading rate area. So it's been a surplus from the overall roading activity, so it's not split.
And secondary to that, is that 1.8 million being funded back out as internal loans, or does it sit in its own cash account?
I'd assume it isn't, but that would be a finance question. The 1.8 doesn't sit in an account, is it? It's just part of the overall treasury function.
So it's been internally loaned, probably. So therefore, if you were to dip into that, that would mean that more work could be done. You'd have to loan fund it to use that fund, or take external borrowing.
Well, yeah, depending on the cash flow at the time.
Yeah.
Councillor Luke.
I kind of am leaning towards the 10%, and I can't, from the way I'm taking it, all we're doing is deferring it. it's not that we're not spending it. I'm just sort of wondering, I don't actually see a problem because I can't understand why we would want to rate for more than we're going to receive from land transport because of the unknown. If we're 10%'s not too high, I just think why rate the ratepayer unnecessarily, because the work's still going to get done in the 3-year term. So it's not that we're not doing the work, but actually we're not overrating the ratepayer. And if by any chance we were wrong in our estimations, there would be at 10%. There would be the option through the annual plan to change it. I just think it's one way of not overrating the ratepayer.
So you know where I'm going. I'm probably looking for first-time callers, but councillor Finch followed by Herbert.
Well, I'm wanting to move option.
What I was trying to say is I will go to recommendations after I hear from first-time callers. Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. So just in response to Councillor Mulwheeler's comments, sheep and beef 2, percentage of increase next year, 25.08. It's not 9%. If it has 85% of our roading rate comes from rural, if we can push that out a little bit, I'm all for the 15%.
Trying to keep it to one per person. All right, we've got a general discussion going there. Your thoughts, Bruce?
Respond to that. That's over a 5-year period.
Year one.
No, I know the increase for this year is 3 year worship. The increase for this year might be substantial, but when you're looking at it over the longer term, the actual increase is less than 10%.
The way I see it, Bruce, is that this year is the big hit and if we can swings and slides it. But can I just get another confirmation, Sharon, that we're talking about now a rural rate increase, but the rural rate increase doesn't account for what we know is going to be increased water rates. That's not shown it, so there's that whack and then there's another one primarily coming in the near future. So sorry, Sharon.
So the question is, increases in the example don't contain water.
Sorry, your team, if we're gonna answer things, that's why I put it there, so that the live streamers can hear you. It does actually work. Thank you, Sharon.
So can I move?
All right then.
I'd like to move option 2, please.
For a second.
So we've got councillor Finch move, councillor Herbert second. Any further discussion? Councillor Mulwheeler.
I'll move an amendment at 10%.
No, I'm going to take that as direct counter because the 15 will flush the 10 anyway. We know what we're voting. If we say yes to the 15, we say no to the 10.
I disagree with
Your worship, I mean, I would say the same, is that it's a valid amendment. It's an alternative.
And then we could have an amendment to the 15 and the 10. One's going to flush the other one out.
Decide the amendment first if we can do that.
All right then, I'll roll with it. We'll see whether this amendment's got legs. Councillor Mulwheeler's put an amendment for 10%. Seconded by Councillor Ludeman. So we're now specifically speaking on the amendment discussion 2.
I'm completely against that. I think it needs to be the 15% and I'll be voting that way.
Any further discussion before we put to the vote? So we know what we're doing, team?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I hear what Councillor Finch is saying, but actually we are a bit of crystal ball gazing here, and so that's why I'm being conservative at 10%, because actually we don't definitely know at this stage what we're going to get from.
But as was pointed
We better not have a game of tennis.
can be changed in the annual plan.
So further questions? So we're clear on what the vote is. It was 10%. Move councillor, so we'll get a show of hands, please, so that Julie's got a chance of taking it. So all those in favour, please say aye and raise your hands.
Aye.
1, 2, Your Worship, which is the mover.
Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Ludeman. Those against, please say nay and raise your hand.
Nay.
And I think there's no abstaining there, so that's everyone else. Now I'll go back where the chair wanted to be right at the start. Take Councillor Finch's original motion of 15%. The discussion is now on the 15%. So we know what we're voting on, team. Put it to the vote and please raise your hands and say aye. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Hold on, can we do this? Raise your hands and say aye.
That's everybody except the first two.
Okay, so, yeah, but they could abstain. So those against?
Just happy to abstain.
Those against, Councillor Ludeman, Councillor Volwell abstaining. Thank goodness I'm chairing it. Can we have it that, you know, like for things like that, raise your hand, please raise your hand. There was a scramble there of a mix. When it comes to a contentious vote this afternoon, we need those hands up so that Julie is clearly seeing it. Makes it awkward. Right. Or an or. What's that bottom one? No, that's an or. We're off to keeping rates down. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is, you know, a number of reports are like this. There were suggestions from various sources about various elements of the budget. This particular one was about reducing the rates cap. I think the report should, it's a relatively short report, speak for itself. It addresses the issue around change to the rates cap and reasons why the suggestion is that actually you'll determine the rates cap when you determine your 10-year program and you can set it based on that. But that's what the report says. Then the other one was in 3.2 was about a suggestion about the government. But anyway, it just makes provision for any discussion. You don't have to resolve anything in resolution 3. But otherwise it just addresses those two questions.
Thank you. Questions for Steve? Councillor Barron.
My opening question to Sharon was how you could get it down to 15%. And I'd like to see a impact of borrowing another 1.67 million to do that. And where that would affect whatever. I'm going to borrow 7.43 million and add another 1.6 onto it. What impact that would have. I know the ratepayers would be very happy. They've asked us to look at how we can reduce cost. We've said to them at all the soapbox meetings that we've got two ways of doing it, rates and debt. And here's a way that debt could reduce the rates to 15%. So I'd like to, I don't know whether I move or whatever, to have a look at the impact that 1.67 million would have to reduce the rates.
Can I, and I promise you I'll come back to get that moved right at the start, but can we have general discussion? And if I forget to do it, please yell out, Kevin, but I'll come back. It's just so early at the start to take a recommendation.
But just about that, Your Worship, I mean, I think the point I was trying to make is, through you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Barron's point, I think the point I was trying to make is that you will, through these 2 days, be making decisions that affects the rates. And one assumes that most of the council will be looking at ways in which the starting point of 40-odd% is going to reduce some of that. So that's, as opposed to going up, that it will reduce in some respect based on your decisions. So you'll have a lower starting point. And you will always have that ability to then make a decision around what you will do further, including using debt, to make a final call as to where you sit and lie on final rates. Mm-hmm. And so the point I was trying to make is that at that point you can because currently you've got a decision that says 25%. Yep. But if you obviously make a decision that says it's sitting at 15, you could logically say, why have we got a rates cap at 25? and make a different decision. I think that was the point I was trying to make, is that you will have that flexibility to make those calls as you work your way through the 2 days.
The assumption being is we may reduce the rates over the next 2 days. And it may not be 7.43 million you need.
Correct.
Thank you. I'll
So should I add this to the list of things to do at the end?
That's the point of worship.
I haven't sort of seen that as specifically on the.
That was why I was talking about that resolution 3,
Yeah.
which is part of that final resolutions. You'll decide how much debt you want to use to ultimately determine what your final rates are going to be. That's your call, and you'll make that.
Councillor, I will come back to you, Kevin, just to mop it up after the discussion, but Councillor Payne.
Thanks, Your Worship. When I read through this, I just thought, because of mandated legislation, I didn't think this was achievable at all. You've put another slant on it, Kevin, for me, but I have got to say that whilst you're saying the ratepayers are saying keeping it below 15%, they're also saying don't increase our debt. Flat out. It's a big ticket item in all the submissions.
So for me, the starting point was that we were running at the, we were scooting along pretty close to the max before the credit rating, we applied for the credit rating. Looking in light of the possibility of changes, maybe that opens up looking at taking on more debt. I just had it that we can't take on more debt because we're at 175. It's a fair and legitimate thing, but I still think it's to be, we might get to the end and find we've done it anyway. Or I suspect we might get there and find that we need a bit more. But until we know at the end what the quantum is, I'll be scared to do it now. I agree with the principle that we've got to consider, it was an arbitrary 15% or.
I agree, and just in relation to Ken's saying, as we've heard, we may be able to get the rates down without increasing the debt.
I think so.
And that's why we're going to.
That's what this whole process is. Yep, we're going to fight, but if we fight and fail, then we still have that option. So I'll go to John, but I'll get, John.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment, there was a bit of talk in there under 3.2 in the second paragraph about sort of ignoring RRC regulations and Tamato Arawa's regulations. And for me, I think we get our LTP out of the road and we start having the debate with the Adrian Water Regulator. I just remind each councillor sitting here, it talks about resolving to contravene legislation. We take an oath to abide by the law, to abide by the acts of this country. So we can't actually do what's not being suggested, but what's been pointed out to us there.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Barron.
In response to that, Your Worship, John, did you read that letter from Simeon Brown and Chris Bishop regarding the water?
I read a lot later, Councillor Barron, probably, yes.
It just says it's important to note that any wastewater standards made by Tamato Arawa will still need to give effect to the rest of the components, including the health of water and other environmental considerations. The removal of the hierarchy of obligations from the settling of wastewater standards means these considerations will be balanced alongside other important considerations such as cost and economic impacts. These interim changes provide certainty for those involved in infrastructure development and avoid potential costs for councils at a time when they are already facing significant costs of future investment in their water infrastructure. It paves the way for you to determine your preferred future water service delivery arrangements, starting with the development of a water services delivery plan within 12 months of enactment of the bill. So it would appear that there's a chance that we can change and push out, that the legislation will change by reading this letter here.
Just before I go to Simon, can I get a clarification? Our MP told us today there's a new email out. Is that today's email?
No, not today's.
Because there is now another one which is more around Te Manata wide, but it's probably in this similar vein. But it's not that one. I was just trying to find the email that they were talking about.
That was last week.
Councillor McAtamaney, you've got a name this time.
Yeah, just in reply to Councillor Barron, I was told by Government MP the other day that hierarchy will stand until they've rewritten the new RMA regulations, and they're not expecting that to 2027. So between now and then, we're obliged to follow the rules as they stand.
And we've also got a regional council that's pushing ahead with the trailblazing.
The issue, I mean, like, it'll be interesting, Your Worship, because, that's one of the reasons why I think it's important that we do a submission to the bill that what Councillor Barron's actually expressing is actually a bill. There was a week or less or something like that for submissions from the whole of the country on that legislation. But I think it's really important because, for all our reasons, we need to be expressing something. So we'll work hard to try and get something to you tomorrow about it. But the other thing, though, is that a couple of things. One is the government's done this before. They've said this is the direction, but it's not in legislation. It's a bill that's in front of a select committee that we will submit to hopefully tomorrow. And nobody knows yet what the outcome of that legislative process will be. So that's number one. The minister can say what he likes, but it's not legislation at this point. We don't know what changes are going to be. Secondly, that particular amendment does say it changes the hierarchy. It says, thou must, it's not us that does it, it's the regional councils. Thou must consider that in terms of the hierarchy change. How that gets reflected in any resource management documentation is a different thing again. And when it gets reflected in that documentation is a different thing. And then finally, we are subject to consents that are lawfully issued under existing legislation that directly requires us to do certain things that is reflected in our LTP investment requirements. And this unravelling of all that, if it's to be unravelled, in terms of what that would be, it's not that something's going to happen in 2 seconds, and it's not something that we're allowed to actually build into our LTP at this point. So it goes back to the, what we can do over the next 12 months or whatever, and then what changes can be reflected in subsequent LTP. I think the highlight is that for the next 1, 2, 3 years, we're going to be pretty much stuck with what we've currently got, unless there are some really substantive legislative changes that allow us to make investment changes, significant investment changes.
So if I have a sort of a directive, it's the intention, I'm sure, of everyone to make prudent decisions with the hope that we can get to a point where we are possibly at that. But until we know where we're at, I'm hesitant to push this one along. But I get the assurance that when we get to that at the end of the process and we know we're looking at an actual X as an interest rate, as a rates rise, and how much it would take to get to 15%, if you still wish you can come back with the resolution. Are you happy with that, Kevin, or are you wanting, we can push the matter now?
This is larger than my brain power can understand and how it all works in the big scheme of things. But it does open up a chink. The Local Government Water Service Preliminary Arrangements Bill gives effect to those decisions. The bill also includes provisions that enable a new financial sustainable model for water care, following the Government and Auckland Council's announcement earlier this month. There's a wee chink there opening up, and you all need to be aware of it. And when it's big enough, I don't know when it's going to be big enough, but we want to go through that.
Councillor Wheeler, followed by
Thank you. Yes, I saw that email that Councillor Barron's raised too, and it sort of gives me a glimmer of hope for the future, but unfortunately it doesn't help us with this LTP for this coming year anyway. And I think the suggestions that we ignore standards and legislation, which some people have put in their submissions, will, well, we might as well vacate our seats, and there'll be commissioners sitting here at the table, and people want that. The community can make that happen in some way, but there'll be less democracy for this district if that's the case. So just having said that, though, I'm prepared to move the recommendation 1 that the council receives the rates down.
Yeah, that's an easy one. I'll second that. There's no need for this. I'll just put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against. Then I suggest we leave the rest of it either sitting on the table? Would that be it, or are we moving
Do
on?
option two.
I'll move option two.
That was
As you were.
that's what I was going to move, your worship.
Okay, so councillor Payne moved, councillor Barron, you're happy to second that? You know that we're coming back to it. Any discussion on it before we put to the vote? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against. Thanks, team, we got there in the end. Over to Balclutha Community Library. Steve.
So your worship, again, these are just picking up from numerous submissions. So it wasn't a consultation option in any way. There were significant numbers of submissions that you will have all read that bring up the suggestion of any funding decisions for library, whether it was to do with the roof replacement, and you've also got in the LTP, you've currently got some funding in the 10-year plan for the library, and so the thought process from staff's perspective was that it's a matter that needs to be addressed, so the report was written on that basis. We've done some homework about potentially the option of moving it into Tacoma, but not sufficient homework to be able to say anything in any detail could be sort of banked on. And I think that was the point. So I think the resolution should stand as they are. Hopefully it's self-explanatory in terms of that. It basically addresses the 10-year program, doesn't put investment in that's not necessarily required at this point, leaves it open for further work to be done to deal with the investment questions, but doesn't point in any particular we should go down this direction or not. But there you go.
So I know, councillor Payne, that you've put your hand up for your conflict.
I just think that maybe there's a pecuniary interest for the Tacoma, and so I don't know where I sit with this one.
You imagine if we're discussing the library and we start talking about a new building and you've excluded yourself. So I think it's one step removed, but it will always come down to your conscience. So which way do you want to go?
One of the things could be, and you can always do that at the time, your worship, is conflicts of interest can be declared at the time of the resolution, depending on what the resolution is there. And so the councillor could just decide the resolution's not a conflict at the time for that, or he could decide it is one. So
you're happy with that? I'm happy that you remain in it until you know what's going on. Okay, so it's noted, and thanks for your upfront, Kenny. Firstly, any questions for Stephen Stubb? Councillor Barron.
I don't know if it's the right time to make an amendment to
So
recommendation two.
can we do the questions,
Right.
and then in the discussion we can go on to recommendations and amendments? Sorry, but just the sequence, let's exhaust the questions so that we have the basis for everyone to fully involve themselves. Councillor Herbert, followed by Grant.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is probably for either Councillor Ludeman or Councillor Payne. Just casting my memory back, I remember talking about the possibility of a museum going into Tacoma originally, but we talked about that. But did we ever actually debate or discuss the library going in there? And what was the reason why it didn't? I can't remember, sorry.
Either?
Yeah, well, absolutely we did, and I mean the main reason why we didn't get it in there was probably footprint. We at that stage, of course, the library needed a huge footprint, and so we needed for funding. And so and it was certainly discussed extensively with Vicky, who was the librarian at that stage, and we had discussions around this table as well. So yeah, so it's not something that we just thought of. It was actually through the feasibility study. It just got too big.
Councillor Grant.
Yeah, through the chair, those submitters that we've got listed there, is that the total number of submitters that have suggested that the library go into Tacoma?
I don't have current here, Your Worship, but my understanding is we did ask for all submissions relating to that subject to be pulled out and put in. Yes.
Right, so there's 37 submitters out of 468, which is 7.91%, which I would not have thought was really warranted. But
Councillor McAtamney.
Yeah, just a question. If council don't own Tupoma, it's owned by a trust, so what right have we got to actually do any investigation into whether the library have their approval?
Well, so that's a question, I think. So, well, there is an answer to that through your worship. One is council is a significant funder to the activity, and we continue to be a significant funder through the operational grants. So we do have an interest. The word would be an interest in that. Secondly, I think the suggestion in option 2 about the feasibility does require that Tupoma would have that interest in it. And for example, if the feasibility work it came out that Tupoma were totally against it, then that would be part of the feasibility, and it would be very difficult to get something across the line if the actual owners of the building were against it. So the idea would be to make sure that the committee or trust of Tupoma or the interests of Tupoma are included in the feasibility. There's no guarantee whichever way that the outcome will be from that.
Councillor Mackie, followed by Will.
Yeah, I envisage that since the council is the biggest tenant, or the ratepayer is the biggest tenant at Tupoma, I don't envisage Tupoma having too much of a rejection of the library going there. Like the council's already got a lot of money vested in, and ratepayers are paying a lot of money now. So I don't see in the future going forward that it's been a problem.
I'd have to say the arm's length relationship, and quite literally they would be able to make the decision and hold us out. They could. It's their. We don't have authority on it. I'll go Councillor Will.
I was just going to answer some of that.
Well, moving the library to Tupoma would not be cost-free for everyone. It would be, as well as the actual moving costs and setting up in there, there'd be ongoing annual rent. And I would just wonder if there is actually a ballpark figure that perhaps Councillor Payne might be able to give here, perhaps just a square meterage basis or something like that. What if that was
don't want to give too much away, Bruce, but yeah, I'm happy to answer a question. Look, it depends on what's required. I mean, at this stage, do they just want a singular space? Do they want space plus offices, space plus offices, and a community area that they can work with all their activities? So all those office spaces have an individual rating, and I don't know, I'll throw ballpark figures at you, maybe 100K a year per annum. And it's a very ballpark. I don't want to influence any decision maker here, but it'll be better.
They're asking us for 80,000. We're only 20,000 off.
Yeah. So if I can answer Councillor Mackey's question as well, it's a very active trust at the moment. They're currently going flat out trying to fill spaces. We've got real interest. There's a real chance that in 6 months' time there is no space there that's available to rent for a library. So we can't halt on those things because, as I say, we're proactive. We've got to make this thing pay.
I've got Councillor Ludeman Graham.
I kind of agree with what Councillor Graham said. And the number of submissions that we got, it's not enough. Why have we just gone and re-roofed the library and we're thinking about doing this? And to me, Tupoma have done exceptionally well, and I'm not on the committee now, so I didn't speak to it. They've done exceptionally well setting up what they've got. They've got a good business model going. They're pretty much got most of the spaces tenanted from what I can see now. And the feasibility study was done when Tupoma was built, as it was for putting the museum there. So why are we questioning now the feasibility study that Tupoma had done? And well, to me, they're a private individual. It's no different to saying to another business in town, we want to put the library in your business. It's the same thing, because we go to the rec centre and say we want to put the library there. This is the same thing. And I just think actually it's not really, even for discussion, to be fair. I'm certainly not in favour of shifting the library to Tupoma. The library.
Sorry, Ally, can I just, we're in question phase. There is a
Oh,
question.
I thought we were gone the other
No,
way.
no, because then I'd go, it matters now to discussion. There's a sequence here we're going to hold to, so we will finish the questions and I had to cut off and full fly there, so I'll go straight back. So specifically questions, team, before we unleash.
Was just to move things along, just move recommendation 1 that we receive the community.
Can I, sorry, my apologies, because I had said Councillor Graham and then Councillor Ludeman just flustered me.
A few points here. One to counter.
Maggie?
No, a question. The 100,000 for the proposed rent will be additional to the 80 they want. But it's their property. They have to say, and I don't know if too many councillors go into the library and actually see what goes on and how much space they need. The space that they've got now probably isn't adequate.
Hold on, with this is a question.
Yeah, don't you think?
Right, so do know that I'm imminently about to go to open discussion, but I do want to give the councillors a chance for only questions, Jock and Dane. So we'll go Jock and Dane. Oh, sorry, we'll go Councillor Martin and Catherine.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question regarding option 1. Setting up a steering group, so there'll be a cost to that too, wouldn't there? Setting up a steering group. Like, who would be paying?
We would start.
No, it'll be community.
Would it be community led or is it going to be council led? So there's going to be a cost.
Yes.
No, there's, I mean, through Your Worship, if there's anything be minor, for example, cup of tea or something like that, but it would be expected, like we did with the rural water schemes, nobody got paid for that, other than staff get paid anyway, and in that sense, that we'd be putting time into it. The expectation wouldn't be that you would be hiring consultants, you wouldn't be necessarily, for those attending that, you wouldn't be paying for that. You would, if you're going to do a feasibility, it does talk about needing to do, obviously, some work associated with technical reports and things like that. So there is that element of the cost.
Yeah, that's what I say. There's got to be a cost. We'd be foolish if we say that it's got to be minimal. There's got to be a cost to it. So,
Councillor Catherine.
Yeah, through Your Worship. So we've now spent 110,000. I presume the library's now weatherproof, and the extra 50,000 that you want to put into next year's budget. Could I ask a bit more clarity on that? 50,000.
You can probably answer that. The project isn't going to be finished by the end of the year, so that's also to finish the rest of the project off.
So we don't need the full 500,000. And this just tells you what we did need for finish this year and what's the last bit is necessary to finish the project. So when we brought forward through Your Worship, when we brought forward the money, it wasn't to complete it within this financial year. It was to do the work within this financial year. The amount left to be completed is estimated at 50,000, which is the total end up project cost, but less than the 500,000 that was in the budget.
I remember rightly, we approved 110,000.
Yes.
This is the 50,000 is new, is it?
No, we approved that we were moving ahead with the works early, so we brought it forward. All we were approving is the amount of money we were going to spend for the work being brought forward this year. It wasn't. We don't have to ask your approval or bring forward anything that's being spent next year. The 50,000 is still what's being spent next year to finish the project.
So just, Your
Worship.
Sorry, have you finished?
Yep.
Councillor Valwela, followed by myself.
So just following on, I think I've got that absolutely clear, but the 50,000 is actually part of that 110,000.
It's additional.
It's additional.
I see Donna on the move.
We couldn't get it all spent this financial year.
Is that not? Oh, yeah.
It's just facing.
Yeah, go for it.
Through you, Chair. So the money we requested to bring forward into this financial year was for the work that we were confident would be completed this year, but it wasn't the full cost of the roof and ventilation project needs. That remaining cost is the 50,000, which includes a contingency factor, which we mentioned earlier, that we allow for. So there is a possibility we potentially may not spend the full 50,000, but we're allowing for that within the budget need to complete that full piece of work.
So we now go Councillor Christie.
If it's not too early, I'd like to move.
No, it's way too early, Dean. So what we're doing is, we're doing questions, specifically questions. Then we will go to discussion, and I will follow that same process on every single item. When we go to the matter is now open for discussion, I'd appreciate if we at least had some discussion before we go to recommendations, but if there's no discussion, at that point I would. I'd appreciate, let's follow the steps so that everyone understands and has a chance. This is question time, this is discussion time, this is putting a recommendation forward and voting time. Sorry, Dean, I will come back to you, but we're out of sequence. Questions?
Yeah.
I knew you had another one. I could see it in there.
Well, the question is probably arised from having to re-roof a building that's subsequently not up to strength, and then we're looking to replace it in years 7 and 8 at 6 million. I mean, that's where the knee-jerk reactions come from. So how good is that estimate that you can replace a like-for-like library building and it's $6 million in year 7 and 8? I mean, that's just.
It's not particularly accurate at all, Worship. Like we argue, don't we, anything out years 7 or 8, it's just an estimate, and that's all it is, because the idea of the original was that you would do further work to determine the scope and the potential better costings for something. But our problem is you have a 10-year program and you're expected to put something in. So if you chose not to put something in, your asset management plan or activity management plan would reflect that you are not going to do any replacement in the 10 years. You'd say that, for example, right? So it's not in, and you'd say you'd do it outside the 10 years. If you say, the building should be, according to that plan, should have something done to it, then you've got to reflect it in some way in the 10-year program. And unfortunately, if it's further out, you don't have the detail in terms of what it's going to be, and you absolutely do not know the costs of what it's going to be until you get closer and closer to that point. So, we would always sort of argue that they're indicative, to the best of your ability, indicative values further out, and the closer you are into year 1, the better you should be relying on.
Okay, so then there's obviously no immediate need for a new library, obviously, but do we have a current WSP engineering report on it, or have we got anything current that we checked out?
We do, yes. That's why, through you, Your Worship, that's why the need was recognised for the new roof and the ventilation system was from that report.
And just through you, Your Worship, we also budgeted $30,000 in year 2 to do the assessment work about what the size of the new library would need to be and all those sorts of things. So that's stuff that's a precursor to whatever you do in the future in terms of renewal. What are the needs? What are the options? And that would be part of refining the costs as well.
Question, Councillor Finch.
Thank you. So my question is, there was issues with mould and mildew. Can that be cleaned up now that the roof has been done and be a healthy, clean space to work in?
Through you, Your Worship, my understanding is that with doing the new roof and the ventilation, that is actually helping to eliminate and reduce the mould.
Thank you.
Righto, team, if that's exhausted the questions. No, it hasn't exhausted the questions.
So, through your worship, just, so in the capital works programs, we've got 390,000 there still, but you're not anticipating we will need any of that or any further capital works for the 2004-5 year.
Through you, Chair, we've requested 50,000 of that.
50,000.
Correct. We just,
And just to make the point, I think we tried to reflect very carefully what was in the budgets and what the implications of the budgets of the various options are. So they should be stepped out quite nicely for you in terms of what's in your capital program and what the budget implications for each of those options are. So it's in the body of the report.
For your information, if you want to look at that, it's on page 4 of your capital program, and it's nicely highlighted in green.
Yes.
Okay, team, if that brings the questions to a close, the matter is now open for discussion. Councillor Ludeman, no, I can't. Bruce, I promised I'd go back to Councillor Ludeman where she will resume.
I probably said my bit, but I mean, obviously, I just don't see the need for a feasibility study. We've gone, and here we are re-roofing the library at the moment, which they feel will make it satisfactory. So why are we not just going with that option? That money's been spent, no more rates impact to anybody. Tacoma isn't owned by us, and that is a huge, I can't understand why it's even really being discussed or considered, because all this was done as part of the feasibility and Tacoma was built.
Councillor Volwella, followed by Grant.
Well, just to get one thing out of the way, I'm happy to move to.
Well done, Bruce. I'll second that. So Councillor Volwella has moved. I second that we receive the report. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, that's one out the way. So I now go to Councillor Graham, followed by Barron.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Considering that the point that Councillor Payne said that there may not be any space available to Tacoma within a year, and we wouldn't even be considering by the time we do a feasibility study and all that sort of stuff, be ready to shift in. I think it's irrelevant. Tacoma owns the building, they make the decisions. It doesn't matter how much we contribute, whether we paid for it all, most of it. It's their call. It's got nothing to do with us.
Councillor Barron, followed by South.
My discussion is that if it was of benefit to Tacoma, they should look at the options that could be put forward for moving, not all of the library maybe, because we haven't done the feasibility study, because libraries aren't just books these days, like we think of them. When we look at what Debbie brings forward to us at meetings, there is many, in fact, there's more activity going on in the library than the books side of it. And the amount of people that they get through that library is incredible. And it would benefit Tacoma immensely by having those people come through there. The library could be split. The main street of Balclutha is slowly dying. There is opportunity in the main street to put part of the library in the main street. The existing library with the new roof could be turned into social housing. You could get 4 social units in there, and that's another thing that could be part of the feasibility study. The space, and there's been talk about Tacoma putting a cafe in there. So when buses come up, they can have a coffee in the cafe. We spend $1 million on destination toilets to try and get people coming into the main street of Balclutha, stopping and using the toilets and spending their money in the town. And now we're going to take them out and put them in Tacoma, where they're not going to go up the main street of Balclutha. So I would suggest, my recommendation, that we do a feasibility study, not just on shifting the library into Tacoma, but taking in context of the big picture of what Clutha could do by combining the facilities of the library and Topoma into Clutha.
Thank you. So, South followed by Councillor Finch. For me, there's quite a few things going on here, but firstly, when we look at the submissions, and in fairness, the most unsolicited suggestion made in the entire LTP was put your library into Topoma. We solicited quite a few and led, but one that just came up out the blue and it needed consideration. So I've gone and had a look. And for me, it comes down to process. I will say that I was disappointed that when we've got one of our major assets and there's an issue like a roof, I would have expected that the asset management plan and the long-term strategy would have been that we take a step back and we look at all options. We've taken an incremental step now with the spending of the roof, and what I do not want to see is that we take a whole lot of incremental steps to the help. That wasn't the best option, but we've got no blooming choice now because we spent our money on the way in. So process for a building that we know fine well is 6 million, 7, 8 years out. What's that? Maybe 6 million, it'll be more than that. There is a substantial amount of money in our 10-year plan to go towards the library. We have an obligation as councillors to go through the correct process and consider all options and not shut the door now. The difference here is that we have an opportunity. The catalyst to this happening, the Topoma happening will be we as council approach the trust. They can't approach us. It's not them to do it. But we would have to instigate the discussion. So I tried to look at it with a real open mind, and Councillor Payne and I 2 or 3, 4, 5 years ago found ourselves in Christchurch, and we went through there, like it's a stunning library. It was a stunning library. And if it was one thing that it reminded me of, it was Topoma. That hub of, I'm an old boomer, I read books, that's a library. Now there's something else going on. There's people sitting, and there's computers, and there's interaction, and there's that hubba, like Topoma. So I haven't got a clue, and I will actually admit, I never actually thought of Topoma being the place of the library. But, you know, like you could have a cafe library, have 10% of the books there, the 10% most favourite books down there, and we have the books off-sourced in a humidity room that they can access within 24 hours on the computer in the modern day. My problem is, I don't know. And I don't know because we haven't done the due diligence required. And that's all I'm asking is, right at the moment, before we spend another amount or before we incrementally find ourselves sleepwalking into, oh, here we are, we've got no option but to do this. And if it came, there was another thing that trying to avoid the vibrancy down there, and not only, as Councillor Barron said, it will be good for Topoma, it will be good for the library, the hubba in both directions. But then you've got a building, we've got an asset that at the moment is an extremely old building with, I've owned extremely old buildings, and surprises is what you get out of extremely old buildings. It's about the only thing you can guarantee. I know there'll be historic with it being Carnegie. But for me, if I put my, my developer's hat on, I see a bit of bare land that could put 3 or 4 flats on, maybe. But now you've put $100,000 and something in a roof for a building I'd probably knock over. And it's making my options less every incremental move we make. And the incremental moves are made because we haven't got a plan. We haven't set up a group to have a look at the options, and that's all we're asking. Can we have a structured process that we go through, and if we come up with that or that, it's the right answer. Councillor Finch.
Thank you. You've pointed out a lot of things that I was going to say, and so in my mind, I think we need to go with option 2 because we need to do a feasibility study and get all the yeses and all the nos and all the options. because there's so many different options that we haven't even slightly considered out there. So I don't think we should be racing in to decide to replace the library in this 10-year plan. We can do it. There's still the long-term, the annual plan and the annual plan and then the 3-year one that we're going to be doing again, that we can make those decisions when we have all the options, all the money figures, all the ins and outs, and the yes and no. So for that, I would be going for the option 2, to be able to do our homework, to not put a lot of money in if we're not going to utilise it properly. We need to have all the facts and all the figures before we make a huge decision like this, and for the amount of money. So that's my reasoning behind it. And I've done a lot of thoughts and walking around and looking as well. And I think we need to halt, sit back, have a feasibility study, and we've got all the facts and the figures, which is definitely needed, and especially in this day and age with what we're doing.
Councillor McCammony, but I am probably, if the hands don't shoot up in a hell of a hurry, I'm heading towards a recommendation.
Yeah, I note too, in year 2, there is 30,000 budgeted in the long-term plan for the feasibility work for the library. And just in some of this discussion, both Councillor Barron and the Mayor have talked about the creating a vibrant library, but it's also come up around the main street. But feasibility study should look at where the multiple places where the library could go. And with a declining main street, perhaps that could be an option too, if you're going to replace the library in the future. But maybe add a bit more life in there.
So can I move if this?
Well, I've got a first-time flyer here,
Yeah.
and then I'll go back to you. Councillor Martin.
There's some great debate there and very valid points that have been brought up by fellow councillors and yourself, Your Worship. And just of note to Councillor Mackie, even though you buy a ticket to an all-black test, it's still one layer to go and sit inside the changing shed. So regarding Tupoma, so as much as we do give them a koha annually, it still doesn't give us the right to muscle on into their changing sheds. So I'll be mindful of that.
Your Worship, before you move to any resolutions, I just want to, from a staff perspective, just put on the record, because you and I do disagree sometimes. I just need to put on the record that you've mentioned the statement that, that the roof was an incremental decision and incremental changes relative to other decisions that you might make strategically. I would like to put on the record, which I've always said, the roof was a health and safety issue. It had to be done. And I don't agree, but I'm saying as a staff member, on the record, it was a health and safety issue that had to be done. And I just want to correct that from our perspective. We can continue to disagree, and you're entitled to your view, Your Worship, but that's on the record. Your view, I need to put on the record staff's view that it's health and safety and had to be done.
And in fairness, as a counter, that roof took 50, 60 years to get to that state. And we had time to do the process beforehand. All I'm asking for is that we go through the correct process. I'm slanting towards Councillor Finch, but 2 new ones. Right? Well, I am going to get to you for the recommendation. I'll give you that assurance, but I'll go to Councillor Martin.
Through you, Your Worship. I'd just like to reiterate what Steve just said, because as a first-term councillor, that was one of Steve's first statements about the library as an incoming councillor, is that there was health and safety concerns there, and that has been noted right from the onset of this term.
Councillor Catherine.
Sitting here looking at option 3, you leave it in the budget. Option 2, and you're taking it off the table, which is obviously where Councillor Finch is swaying. You'll see, but then we know that it's going to come back within the 10 years. Is that option? Option 1 is not saying that it's going to go into Tupoma.
option one is actually telling you that you want to have a look, like you've identified a building that's old, you've identified a building that's got issues. And we're identifying, what I'm saying is I actually like option one. It's not saying it's a done deal, it's going there, but it's actually, what it's actually saying is we can go and create some vibrancy into that building. You know, really get over humming and really get, you know, with the visitation rates. And we know that we've got tenancy spaces in there currently that the council funded tenants, but it's not to say that those people couldn't be accommodated somewhere else. I just think we need to actually have that conversation and go forward. What does it actually really look like? You know, like another example we put around the table is down home in Owaka, and we've got a council with a library with an information centre, and it flows very well all together, and they support each other, all in one little unit, and it's a very vibrant and well-used facility. So I think we're not, Topoma could turn around and tell us to go away, but I think we should be actually really looking at that, because we know that the library one day needs to be replaced. We know that. So two, you're taking it off the table, but we know that it's actually going to come back. We know it's not going to be 6 million. We know it's going to be at least 10 million for the floor space they'll want. So why shouldn't we look at that opportunity?
So I'll go to Councillor Finch, because I think she's got her options and her recommendations.
Yes, so option 2 is not saying we don't look at Topoma, because we're doing the feasibility study. It gives you that option. It's not wiping out Topoma.
No, hold on. You mean recommendation 2, Councillor. Option 1 is recommendation 2.
Yes,
So let's talk options, not recommendations.
right, okay, so option 1, yes, is that's set up the steering group. I want option 2.
You're talking the other way.
No, sorry, it is. Sorry, reading wrong. Yes, so definitely option 1, 2, but to also, I want increase the budget of replacement building. Yes, yeah. Right.
So I'm completely lost now.
Can you read out your
Excuse me.
Can you read it full, please?
Just checking, Your Worship, what we've tried to do, so it's not contained within the resolutions, but each option has got some budget implications of the options in the body of the report. And I think that's what the councillor is referring to.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
if you were to approve any of the resolutions relating to the options, the assumption is you're also approving the budget implications that are contained within.
Yes.
Correct.
So if you felt that you wanted to change that or thereabout, you would need to specifically make sure you reference that in the resolution.
And can I please clarify, because we are starting to get confused, we will from here on in for this talk options. Option 1, option 2, and option 3, not recommendation 2, recommendation 3, and recommendation 4. When we discuss, we talk options, so we know what one we're talking about.
Yes, options.
So Councillor Finch, I'm going back to you.
Yes, so option 1, feasibility, but not just looking at the Topoma. I want to look up all the options for the feasibility, make sure that is in there.
I would presume that would be in the scope, because it needs
Yes.
worded and all other options or something. So
Yes, so.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Your Worship, we had funding in year 2 for feasibility work, specifically deal with the replacement of the existing library, right? So, if the suggestion is that you just want to, you want to include a feasibility that's broader than just moving it to Topoma, you can do that, right? And you can do it by steering group if that's the mechanism. So, I would suggest you still needed a slight amendment to the resolution, but the slight amendment would simply be just a broader feasibility study that includes the transfer of the library into.
Okay, so we know, I'm quite sure Julie's taken that all in and she's going to come up with a scintillating recommendation that articulates it all. But we know basically what Gaynor is saying. Option one, that we set up a feasibility group, not only for Tupoma, but everything. So we're bringing that forward.
Yes.
Done. Oh, hold on, we'll need a seconder before we can open the discussion. I need a seconder before I can open it. Councillor McCrusty seconded, now can go to you. Matters open for discussion.
Can you please read the recommendation? Because I was actually going to try to help Councillor Finch here, that the council approves option one, set up a steering group in year one to determine the feasibility of transferring out to the community library to Tupoma or other.
Yes, that's what we're saying, or other options.
Is that,
Yes.
is that your?
Yes, thank you.
That's been seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you okay with that, Julie? Okay, Councillor Graham.
I think we need to probably firstly change the name of what we call libraries to get a clearer view that and understanding it will never ever fit in that space. But I'll concede that a feasibility study will probably prove that. So I'll be supporting the recommendation that was earlier.
So I'm not seeing the hands flying up. Are we ready to go to a vote? We have got Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, I think while we've got a budget there as well in years, 7 and 8 for about $5 million. People are throwing figures around, oh, it'll be more than that in the future. Well, that's just guesstimates at the moment. I think if the motion passes as it is, I think we still need to have some idea of what the current library building is, what work needs to be done on that. So should that $30,000, which is proposed for year 2, an investigation into the library, the condition of the library, perhaps that needs to become brought forward as well and incorporated, and the study actually takes into account the condition report.
Yes.
That's what we'd said.
Yes.
That's what we do.
The funding hasn't been brought. Funding has to be brought forward then to do that.
So that would be a second recommendation, or no, it would be just part of the
Yes.
recommendation?
Well, that would have to be additional change in budget.
36.
So are you doing that, Bruce?
Well, I'll let the first recommendation, the first motion,
Yeah.
put and see what its fate is.
Okay then, let's see whether it grows legs, but that's where we're heading. Councillor Lederman.
Well, I have to say that I'll be voting against the motion. I actually think we've overstepped the mark here, and before we should be voting on this, we should have had a discussion with Tupoma. I think it's actually wrong that we're agreeing to this before we've actually gone and met with the Tupoma trustees and seen if this was even on the table for them. So I think we've overstepped our mark, to be fair. It's a private, I know council has put a lot of funding into it, but I think we've overstepped the mark in making a decision to do a feasibility study on transferring the library into Tupoma without discussing it with Tupoma. A different way would be a feasibility study on the future of the library and how we look at whether it's replaced or what happens with the library, or whether even I could throw in whether the museum would go into the library one day. I mean, a feasibility, but to say a feasibility going into Tupoma, I totally object to, because we have not gone and had a discussion with Tupoma first. It's not.
No, you'll finish the debate.
So just to respond, whilst there's been no formal communication with the trustees, there has been communication with trustees before that report was written.
And from my perspective, if we haven't got the courage to at least ask the question, if we shut this down today blindly, we've failed in our duty. If it was specifically Tupoma and only Tupoma that we're saying, then maybe there's credence. But to me, can I say? If it's open to all options, But what we're doing is we're bringing it forward because in a year's time, the option of Tupoma will be taken away from us, probably. And that's, sorry. So for me, it's for all options, but taking the opportunity to bring it forward so that we can at least consider Tupoma, and to do anything less is actually, we're too scared to ask the question. We should never ever be too scared to ask the questions and go through a process. Councillor, yeah, okay, Kenny, you're right, yeah, no, you've made your decision.
So
yeah.
no opinion, just to confirm that we have presented this to the trust, and so they are aware of it.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Well, just for Councillor Ludeman, just want to remind you that it's and other. What you're voting on is the Abruptly Library and other. It's a study to find out where. That's what it is.
Well, I accept that
We're working under standing orders.
Yeah.
Your worship.
Sorry.
I'm just
I was more worried about Councillor Martin. If he opened up the door, then they had to exclude him from voting, so.
okay, so I can't speak.
So Councillor Graham.
Through you, I take it that a working group or whatever it is would involve existing tenants at Tupoma?
Your worship, I think the makeup of the steering group would be extremely important, that it's inclusive and representative. Because again, we go back to the point, there's been some questions, why was this raised in the first place? Well, what's good from a staff perspective is that the public see that you are debating this subject, and whatever you decide, you've actually thought about everything, as opposed to it not being raised at all. And then there'll be a section of the community that says we don't listen to anything that they question us about. And we did have an item in our LTP about the library, and you would be doing a capital project review on it anyway. So just pulled it together, and I don't mind which way you're going. The good thing from our perspective is you're debating it, and the public sees you debating it. So that was the reason why there's a report there.
Okay, team, we've got, if we do, that closes it down.
Yes, please.
Hold on, it's not you, yes, please, it's the others. All right, Councillor Finch, closing.
Thank you. So the reason it's got that is so that it's open to anything. I'm not just looking at Tupoma, I'm looking at all the other options there are out there for the library, everything. And so that's why we're doing the actual feasibility, is to enable us to have all those options at hand. Make the really good, informed, open decision about what options we have available to us. Not just one, but a lot of options.
Yep. Okay, so we've had the discussion, we put it to a vote, and as all.
Can I have?
No, because she closed the discussion.
I recommend that the motion read back, so I know.
Oh, yeah, you can do that, but. Sorry, Bruce, but.
I take on this. Move councillors Finch and McCosty that council approves option 1, set up a steering group in year 1 to determine the feasibility of transferring the Abruptly Community Library into Tupoma or any other site.
Correct. Okay, so we're quite clear, and we know that we keep your hands up and make it quite clear where your vote is. Councillor Payne, can I just confirm, are you in or out? So let it be noted that Councillor Payne's out. So we put it to the vote. Could everyone that agreed please raise your hands and say aye?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Keep your hands up, please. 12, your worship, because Julie's just making sure she gets the right people.
And then those against, please raise your hands and say no. So that's Councillor Ludeman and any abstaining. Councillor Volwheeler. So thank you. What we'll do.
Sorry, there's one still thing that was expected. There was the question around the 30,000 in year 2.
So that will be option 4, the council approves.
No, so there'll be a new resolution, Your Worship, that's been proposed, as I understand from the discussion.
Yeah.
Was that the year 2 $30,000 funding be brought forward into year 1.
Councillor Vowell, were you going to do that?
Yes, $30,000 be brought forward to year 1 to for a condition assessment.
Need a second.
What I understand it would be using, we'd be using the 30,000 in the first instance for, to contribute to the feasibility work to ensure that happens. So looking at the options, which could be condition reports, could be other things.
So I need a seconder, please, councillor Finch. So we're going to move her in a seconder. Please, once again, same old process. All those in favour, raise your hands and say aye.
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 That's unanimous. Those against? Gone. So thank you. That brings us to smoking. Can I just say something and just jog? Just so that everyone knows, because I know Councillor Graham's done it, I'm going to probably get pedantic. If in the middle of a discussion, if you have to do it, you have to do it. But if you leave the room, I've got to exclude you from that section of the vote because you haven't heard all the discussion, you haven't been involved. My apology, but you make your call now on what we have to do for correct procedure. What say we come back at 11:30? 82. Denver, welcome.
So we've got, through you, your worship, I've just put some additional information from some questions that have arisen since this report has been published. And I'll just run through that really briefly before we hand over to Donna and Denver, because I'm sure there'll be additional questions on this item. So I have given you a copy of it, so if you want to make any notes, you can. But I just wanted to highlight a few things in terms of this project. And the budgets, I'll just read it through very briefly. Budgets were presented to the Balmoral 1, 2 and Tuapeka Rural Water Scheme committees, including the first 3 years estimated water rates. And these are consistent with the figures that were in the LTP consultation document. This was based on the estimated project cost of $19.8 million. And those annual rates are listed there. And one thing I would like to just stress on that is they include that $7 million of offset we've already talked about. So any changes to that will change these water rates, because the way we applied that was through the water rates for urban and rural. The revised estimate to now complete the project, which you will have seen in the report, is $25 million. Not all of these costs have been confirmed, and separate information or answers about these costs will be provided. And that's Donna and Dunbar here to answer some of those questions. However, delays in the project may result in additional costs and significant pressure from the water regulator and our communities that have been asking when the boil water notices will be lifted. The first few years of the LTP do not change with the additional cost due to the additional expenditure. The rest of the projected rates in the LTP were also presented and discussed with the Rural Water Scheme committees. These indicated a longer-term estimated rate of $866 plus GST, which are attached at the back, the original rates that were presented to the water scheme committees, as well as the revised rates to fund the additional funding. Additional capital requirements to finish the project do not change the projected rates in the first few years, but they do in the longer term, and that pushes it up to an average over the final 7 years of $1,004 plus GST. This was discussed at some of the water scheme committees that it was looking pretty high in those outer years based on the drafts, but they were signed off by the committees. This is subject to a range of adjustments that can be made, such as changes in interest rates, review of operational costs, and other financial options before these rates would be realised. Other schemes have sold more units to keep rates down and consistent, but this may be difficult with a scheme due to the high rate. Traditionally, for new schemes, we've also used depreciation funds to offset loan principal. This avoids the current customers paying twice for the scheme, especially when the pipes have an 80 to 100 year life, but the loans we currently raise are for 25 years. There is less opportunity to do this in the first few years, but in the later LTP period, this could reduce the unit rate by $100 from what's shown in the drafts at the back. Also means less funds for renewals, but at this stage, all renewals in the LTP period have been loan funded in the budget. Another thing that I think I was quite surprised about, which I thought you guys would be interested in, is that this was discussed right from when the scheme was actually instigated, is that there is significant additional capacity built into the new scheme. It includes at least 25% capacity in main supply pipelines, and from my calculations, nearly 100% additional capacity at the treatment plant. It has a capacity of 8 megalitres per day, and if we allow 500 units for Lawrence, then the current sold demand is about 4.4 megalitres. So there's significant capacity for an additional user and or increased supply to be created, even if we do allow a certain allowance. Council staff have also looked at the option of interest-only funding on 20% of the total cost. That's just an estimate of potentially the extra capacity we have. We would still need to fund the interest cost, but not the principal, and that would reduce the unit rate by about $37. So that is an option available to you, but it's relatively minor in the scheme of things. So it's up to council to decide if you want to apply that when we're looking to fund that. Any additional connections or users will enable the unit rate to be held at a lower level for a longer period, which is what's happened on other schemes. In terms of future monitoring, obviously it depends on the decisions today, but one option that we have suggested there, and this is to keep the key people involved, the water scheme chairs, the current water scheme chairs, etc., would be the confirmation of the current costs and any discussions for future use, future connections. We effectively form a mini PCG, a project control group, and that would be in addition to the main PCG where it will be reported back through. So just wanted to outline some of those things before we get into the debate and we get into the report. And just, I suppose I did also want to highlight that when we did come and talk to you, so talk to the PCG about the additional pipe contract cost. We did say that we would be coming back through the decision-making process once we had confirmed some of those other costs. And this would be the appropriate time to talk about those costs. Yes, certainly more than I expected, and that's part of the discussion we'll be getting through into today. But, wanted to just sort of outline those things before we get into the debate. Happy to take any questions or information before we hand over to Donna and Demba.
Thank you for Jules. So two-part question, and we go to Jules for the first part of the question, or Jules and Steve, then we go to Donna and Demba. So I'll continue to be my pedantic self and stick to questions first, starting with Councillor Kennedy, followed by Herbert.
Sort of two little bits to the question. Can the users opt out, or can they decline units if they've got a certain amount of units?
There is a current, through you, Your Worship, there is a current process that we have that refers them to the water scheme committees for approval. And there's some more work we need to do on that, but the current process is they get referred to the water scheme committees for consideration if they want to reduce units.
They want to reduce.
Or get more units. The current delegation in councils, for councils' water schemes is changes of units, new connections and disconnections go through the water scheme committee for consideration.
Can I have a clarification on that, Jules? That's a gentleman's agreement. From a legal perspective, rural consumers perfectly entitled to earn back the units, from a legal perspective.
It's if they go through a different process, but the current process is that we've been advised by our legal advice is to advise people it goes to the committee first.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you. Jules, so you've talked there about you may be also able to use depreciation funds to offset principal. We don't have any depreciation funds left, do we?
If in the budget for this, if you look at the budgets for this that were presented, as we start, that's why I've said it's at the later end of the 10-year period. This Greenfield budget, the Greenfield scheme had $2.5 million in depreciation reserves by the end of the 10-year period. So that's why I've said that can be applied because as we start to fund more depreciation, we're funding 25% for the first 5 years and then 50% for the next period. So that will keep the reserves low, but that will offset the principal repayments. And we do that now for schemes. Pomahaka does that. Waipahi has done that regularly because it's a relatively new scheme with a lot of loans. So yeah, we do regularly do that to ensure that the current users aren't paying twice, because especially for long-term assets.
I'm really robbing Paul back Peter, and you can just pay the principal off straight away. But yeah, okay. Thank you.
Further questions to Steve and Jules before we go to Donna and Dunbar? We're heading to Donna and Dunbar. Welcome. Do you have anything further you wish to add before we have questions?
Through you, Worship, I think we'll take it that you've read the report and we'll just answer any questions you have.
Questions, team? Councillor McCammon.
Can I ask one question so that, perhaps I should have asked before, but the original estimated project cost was 19.8 million. Now the actual piping's come in at somewhere around 12.
Yes, some near to 12 million, yes.
Yeah.
Pipeline project, yeah.
So basically, the project's going to 13 million, so the estimates for all the pumping stations and the treatment plants were effectively gone from 8 million to 13 million. I've got a document here originally from December 2020, I must have had the inflation and stuff. The estimates given to the rural water schemes there were for a project, new bore supply for the water schemes in Lawrence, $14.3 million. Yes, of course, we've had inflation. I've also just recently been reading that the average water increase cost over the last 3 years for councils have been about 30%. So by that reckoning, project should have still been $18 or $19 million.
For you, the Chair, that's not just those costs, of course, you've got labour as well as electrical and steel, and on average, the PPI, civil construction, was increasing by 40% since post-COVID. We are starting to reduce that now though, with supply and demand, but that's where it was sitting. Yeah.
It's also, it's an incredible fit.
Agreed.
And on that same document, the estimated rate per unit was $390, plus or minus 30%. And that's basically where the approval come from scheme committees at the time. I know later we were told it probably would be around that $500 mark. Here we are looking at $1,000 in the couple. It's, sorry, I'm possibly.
No, that's
getting
okay.
it
Like,
started,
I understand, but.
previous to, this, but it's potentially a financial disaster for a lot of farmers with multiple units.
Donna, can I just get a clarification? What we're looking at that 5.5 million, it isn't tenders, it's like firm estimates. Am I right in that they are not tenders, and consequently, while we're so damn near the finish line that it's not crystal ball gazing, but they are not in concrete?
These are, through you, Chair, these are firm estimations from the contractor that's currently doing this project work with us. And I think we got the last costings in yesterday.
Not really. Last costing we got in was last week, but this costing is up to 90%, correct? Because most of the costing are 100% and just a little bit of equipment charges and those are yet to come.
Councillor, sorry, Dane, did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I just would like to add that we have been working very hard and pushing hard with the contractors concerned and involved to get these costs to us right to this point, because we were aware, as we mentioned in late March, that there was going to be budget implications and cost escalation. And from that, we then had to wait for the treatment plant designs to be fully completed, for the costs to then go out for estimations and quotations. So we have been pushing hard, and I think in the timeline that we looked at last night, the 24th of April, PCG meeting, Dambo gave an update. We advised then of the bidding materials overrun, which we made aware to PCG. We also notified at that time that we would require additional budget to complete the project, and that we were completing our due diligence to determine areas that would potentially make savings or adjustments to be able to provide this information to these meetings. We then, at the 9th of May council meeting, we requested to bring forward 2.36 million of the 4.9 million that's available in the next financial year, because Dunbar has been project managing this project successfully and going ahead of time, which means we're actually making cost savings because we're getting the work done now rather than next financial year. And again, we notified and reiterated again that we'd be bringing to this meeting as many of the known costs that we were aware of as to this time.
So please don't in any way think that this is personal, because I know you're doing everything you can in an absolutely impossible situation. My point is that all councils in New Zealand have been rendered impotent in their ability to genuinely negotiate. We could go now, we've got 90% of it in, but the last wee bit, we can make it 6 million. Do it, or we go to court. We can make it 7 million. Do it and go to court, 8 million. It's not your fault and it's not the structure. It is this ludicrous situation that we're in, and that is, so please don't think it's attack on you. My concern is this situation that we now have, where in effect council's genuine ability to negotiate has been taken from them. We don't. We either do it now or we go to court. I'm going to go to Councillor Graham and then Councillor Vollier.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Now, I just need a bit of clarity on this. Is this to finish the contract as a spec, or is there a whole lot of extras in there, or, you know, fancy bits and throw on this? Because, boy, you're taking all that stuff you've just told us. Still a lot of money. I think I'd rather just pay what I'm paying now and have to buy bottled water and stick with the boiled water notice. That's shocking. Sorry.
Councillor Volweller.
A question, possibly a rhetorical one, but this is replacing 3 treatment plants, how much would it cost to bring those treatment plants up to standard, and what would the unit rate be for each of those plants as well?
Does the
You don't have to
council offer a
answer that.
suggested answer?
Can I, excuse me, am I allowed to make a comment? I find that, unfortunately, it's probably now irrelevant, Bruce, when they've already spent $20 million on the project.
It is perhaps irrelevant, but then the question is then what would consumers have been paying anyway if we'd brought the comparison as to what they might have been paying if we hadn't undertaken this project. If we tried to bring those plants up to standard, possibly the figure mightn't be much less than the $1,000 that it might end up at. So that's, and Lawrence is in a critical situation too at the moment.
So through you, Your Worship, we did look at that at the time, and that was part of the key consideration of going down this path. The other key consideration was that there was concerns about the water supplies for some of those other plants as well. This went to a much better supply, and with the aim of having lower operating costs than running 3 water treatment plants into the future.
Can I also say that that was also before Te Mata Arawai became involved in the whole thing too, which is a significant impact on costs.
So just before I go to John, my question is, we've mentioned the possibility of lowering the specs as such, lowering the quantity or the ability to produce. At the same time, there's been, gee, what if we went mega scheme down through Milton and we started going bigger? If we were to agree to reduce the capacity, that would terminate any option to carry on down to Milton and onwards. Is that right?
So the chair, I'll start answering from you. Yes, definitely that will limit our option to expand our scheme, definitely. And yes, the additional 5.435 million we are asking today, seeking to the additional budget, is to finish the Greenfield Bore project, which includes 2 contracts right now for pipeline and the pump station contract. In the same contract, pump station contract, the construction of treatment plant is provisional item. So, but this 5.4 million includes whole lot of other components, which, for example, drilling 2 new bore, also putting new pump head on those 3 bores, and also civil works at the treatment plant, construction of building of treatment plant, and also connecting our new scheme to Belmore 1, 2, and Topeka East. All those works are included in this $5.435 million. And coming to Bruce, on a high level discussion, if we stop this one and bring up our existing infrastructure treatment plant to produce standard drinking water, it might nearly take us to $5 to $6 million to bring that up to standard.
No, it's through you, Your Worship, it's way more than that. The estimate just for Waitāhuna was 6 or 7. It was millions of dollars 3 years ago.
Through you, Your Worship, what might be helpful is I sat down with the team late yesterday afternoon and sort of threw a lot of hypothetical questions to them to sort of get some sounding for you today. So what I might do is I might just go through those for you, because we might have thought of some questions that you may not have thought about, and we might be able to give you some answers or some more information that will help you to determine your response and answers today. So one of the questions that we asked was, if the project was to stop, what are the consequences? Will we be compliant with Te Mata Arawai and the regulatory requirements? No, we wouldn't be. We've got till the 31st of December 2024, correct me if I'm wrong with that date, Linda, to meet the regulatory requirements for the townships concerned. So if we were to stop this project today, we would not meet that requirement. That's the first comment. The main part of the reason for this is that we're currently doing boil water notices, which hence we're non-compliant. One of the other questions we asked was the short timing of the cost and the budget blowout. How did this happen? And I talked you through that timeline. So although it seems that it's come to us with short notice, it's only 2.5 months, as soon as we had recognised and realised that, Dunbar's done a huge amount of work, and I appreciate it, Worship, acknowledging that it's nothing personal with the team because they are working incredibly hard. That we've recognised that we won't, $4.9 million that we had budgeted the next financial year was not going to be sufficient to complete this project to the level that's required. So I'm just reading through my notes as we go. And I'm just talking about how we've raised that we needed the additional money, and with the progress of the project, with the timeline, we requested to bring the funds forward into this year, which you approved and agreed. With the knowledge of the original estimations for the treatment plant and ball fields that were allowed for, are they hugely less than what the costs are today? The cost estimate for the preliminary design work was already included within those original prices and indications, and as I've mentioned prior to Councillor McAtamney, got it right, is that since 2020 or since post-COVID, horrifically, some costs, predominantly steel and diesel, have increased by up to 40% with PPI costs, let alone consumer price index costing as well. They are coming backwards. We are seeing a slight reduction in that, but it is still significantly higher. And there are also delays in material supplies, getting them from overseas. I do know up to 12 months ago, but I can't confirm as of today, that as materials were coming from overseas and being shipped to New Zealand, what shipping countries were doing to help reduce their costs, which doesn't help us, is that they would transport the materials to Australia. They would take them off the ships and leave them sitting in the ports in Australia until such time as there was a full shipload to come to New Zealand. So that was happening historically and post-COVID, which hasn't helped with these additional cost increases. Again, I can't comment if it's still status quo, but it was definitely the case a good 12, 18 months ago. We talked about, do we consider going out to tender for this treatment work? And I can confirm that the current contractor, we have an incredibly good margin rate. I won't disclose that in this public forum, but I'm happy to disclose outside of that. And that is locked in. The risk that we have is if we do decide to go out to tender for the treatment plant work, is that it allows up to about 3 months for a full tender process, particularly when we're looking at around up to $5 million or $5.5 million for work. You have to get the tender documentation ready. You have to go out to tender and allow the submission. The contractors are good 4, potentially 6 months for this value of work. Then the evaluation occurs, which is about a 2-week time period. In that time, often contractors will submit what we call tags, and that terminology is basic questions. So they will put questions forward as, why do you want X, Y, Z, or have you thought of doing A, B, C? And those discussions and communication takes time. What could occur with that is that the tenders could come in greater than the cost that we have now. And we're all aware in this room that that has happened to us once before with the project. We could also have that the current contractor is no longer available to continue the project because 3 months stand down period, they have to bring in revenue. And so consequently, they'll move their teams to other projects. So we'll then again potentially lose more time, which is potentially greater cost impacts. And of course, the timing, it's going to push everything out. We may not be able to meet the 31 December deadline to meet regulatory requirements. I know these are daunting topics and comments, but I think it's best if we provide you as much factual evidence that we can today so that in your minds, you make the best sound decision that you can.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Martin, followed by Kennedy.
Through you, Your Worship, just going back to Councillor Wheeler's comment there about the cost of the 3 water plants, but that cost would have been factored in the very beginning of this process. That's the whole idea of getting the project going. But to Donna, so you're saying that the deadline's 31 December 2024. There's no way that we'll achieve that deadline as it is anyway. We don't have the bore heads, we don't have the pump station, all that in place. Like, how can we meet that deadline as it sits now? Because we've only got 90% of those estimates that you've got now aren't locked in at 100. That's only 90%. We're only partway there. Like, can you?
The price we have locked in right now is at 90%. That 90% will not go above. If anything, it will go down, but it's not going above. We have that agreement with our cost supplier, with our contractor, locked in our contract document and in the documentations. And also, we'll definitely complete this by 31st December and we'll commission by 31st December 2024, because all this wellhead and all the works has been scheduled and it's in plan to complete that work in timely manner, one after another, and some of work simultaneously, working different contractor, different subcontractor at different part of the project work where it's happening. So we'll definitely complete the project in time if we.
Is that including the reservoir for Lawrence?
Yes, everything.
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 You're 100% sure.
We will commission the water from Clydeville and water will reach to the Lawrence. And we'll have our treatment plant, bore field, 3 pump station, reservoir operating.
Because we've been asking this question for a while and no one's ever guaranteed us. So you're confident it will be 31 December?
Yeah, 100% if we get $5.35 million too.
If you get one, sorry, what was that?
We'll get approval for this budget, we'll complete the project.
Right, so there's enough there, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wanting to jump in here. We have our best intentions for that date and we know that we have to meet that date. But like we mentioned earlier, with projects, unfortunately, things happen. But we're definitely putting as much mitigation as we can in place. Like the Lawrence Reservoir project has been working in parallel with this, so that we're trying to get as much done and completed. But there's never 100% guarantee in life for anything. And I just want to double confirm that with the councillors at the moment. But we are working very closely with Linda and her team to ensure that we can, as best to our knowledge today, meet that deadline. But we can't 100% hand on heart lock that in.
Councillor Kennedy, followed by Payne.
So, just a question here on figures. We've got 2 options, 2 figures. So, reading between the lines, then we need to 5,435 to totally finish the whole project.
Yeah, we have nearly $240 in saving if we don't go for communication as a fiber and we use radio signals. And that communication is in relation to treatment plant, talking with pump stations we have. So we usually tend to have that in fiber communication, which is good, and that is the future proofing. And in future, all the communication will be by fiber. But we can save 240K if we use radio signals in that. That's why there is 2 total.
We also have, there are other options, but there are risks with that. So currently we've allowed for 3 bores.
Yes.
Bores, isn't it? We had a discussion yesterday with our engineers representatives as well. And yes, we could proceed with 2 rather than the 3. The saving associated with that would only be about $150,000. The risk that we run if we don't do the 3 is that we would have poor performance out of the wells, in which case, if there was something to go wrong and we had maintenance issues, we would run the opportunity to be able to supply water to the level we need to. we would only have enough water for about 1 to 2 hours without the 3. So you just presenting all the facts that you could potentially save another 150, but the impact to the community would be huge.
Councillor Payne, did I go to you?
No, but thank you.
So Councillor Payne followed by Finch McAtee.
So look, I'm looking at it and I'm going, we've got very little options here, very few options anyway. We've got to continue. We know that. I think we all know very well we've got to continue. We're looking at 2 or 3, which one we're going to do. However, I really do emphasise with Mr. Farmer because the per unit rate is going to triple. And not only that, they have multiple units. It's not just 1 or 2 units like the old urban person. They have 30 units in some cases. It's going to be a huge bill for them. However, I do believe that all the water schemes have agreed to this. Am I correct? Or the members, that they know it, they understand, they've talked about it?
No,
Not yet. It's still to come. Not the current price.
The concept
The
of
pre-
the board's agreed.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. I just want to move things along and this.
Sorry, Kenny, is this a question?
No, sorry.
We'll get to moving it along when we get rid of the questions. So we're going to stick to the questions team, and then you pull me into line if I don't go from questions to discussion. So questions, Councillor Finch, McAtamaney, Herbert.
Thank you. So I just wanted to ask the question about the fibre, which is nice to have. So that's faster communication, and that's an additional 240. And I'm not picking holes. You've done a wonderful job, and thank you for all the hard work you've been doing to give us all that information. But how come likes of that wasn't in the original estimate or budget, please?
It was originally scoped in 19.8 million approved budget. Due to increase in cost of every material, labor cost, main cost, the cost for this one has gone up because we are using fiber and that's material, and the cost has gone nearly 38% above than we have had like 2 years ago. And then there is labor cost and equipment cost to do the actual work.
And the transformer costs have significantly increased as well.
Thank you very much. It's gone up 38%.
Councillors McAtamaney, Herbert, Mackie.
Yeah, just a technical question on that fibre again. So that's fibre to go down the existing red pipe that's been pulled in with the main line.
Yes.
Councillor Herbert. No, you're gone. Councillor Mackie.
Well, so there's a line being pulled in beside the pipeline to put what down?
Yeah, there is 50 mm pipe to put the fiber in there.
Right, so you're running a fibre optic out. Now, is it going past houses that could be utilised and you could give an option of fibre broadband for them and recoup some of the money through hookups?
No.
No.
That is solely for our purpose, for our SCADA telemetry and water outlook telemetry work.
Right, so you're just running one strand of fibre optic cable?
Yes. From treatment plant location to Borefield and from treatment plant to up to Crane Road from the stations.
Thank you.
Okay, team, if that's exhausted that, hasn't exhausted the questions.
Just again, through your wish. The fibre, what influence, what's the difference, I guess, between fibre and just the radio communications? How does that going to affect?
The main difference for fiber and radio communication is, since we already know this is rural scheme, in bad weather condition, the signals get disturbed because of lots of weather condition and raining and that. But if it is fiber, nothing will get disturbed, and we'll get the actual information about our equipment, our level of water we are producing, we are extracting and everything, like instantaneously without any interruption. in that weather condition. But if we are using signals, we won't get that actual information right when we need it.
Councillor Catherwood.
Through you, Worship. I suppose the biggest question as a councillor sitting around the table is this isn't the first wee surprise we've had of budget blowouts. The question would be is how is we as a council are going to mitigate this from happening in the future? And, I mean, I know we were here to discuss questions about the decision here, but I mean, it made total sense to me all the way through from the very start when the Greenfield 4 project arrived. It all made absolute total sense. I remember rightly, I think Ben Gold was the engineer at the time. And now we've got to this day and I've turned up to a massive surprise. And when I start hearing about the unit rate in the future, I really fear for those that have got units on it. And we need to somehow, the question is how do we not let this ever happen again in any of these projects that we're trying to operate around this council? Because we get another budget blow like this in any one of our projects going forward, we're in a lot of trouble. I suppose that's really for Steve, I suppose. It's
Well, it is an
because,
example.
you know, we can't keep getting surprises with blowing budgets.
So through your worship, no, it's a fair question. You know, I go to the bill for diploma, for example. At the time, you could only get the fixed contract for the construction part of the process, and you could not get, fixed contracts for the other major components. And so when that contract was approved, it was known that the only thing you could fix was that part, and the rest of it was going to be, you need to take it when you get that the estimates, the tenders, and the contracts. Where I see that we're always going to maintain risk is if we have these significant projects that have substantial components like pipeline, pump station, treatment plant, electrical, whatever, and you provide in that project only to lock in for the procurement process one of those elements, you will always carry a risk of getting yourself in the position where you've already gone down a pathway that you can't get out of, and yet you haven't mitigated the financial risk of procurement because you don't have sitting in your hot little hand those contracts, right? And so that's the situation we find ourselves, because now these contracts are coming through, the tenders are coming through, pipeline's nearly built, and we're finding these prices coming through that become surprises. So in a procurement sense, the only way you can guarantee that is to be able to craft the procurement process to provide that. But I'm not sure, like when we put it onto the team and we look at how we do these sort of things, back in 2022, because we approved the pipeline project tenders in 2022. And we're just getting, we're just getting the final designs of the plants and all that side of things sorted now, which have a cost, okay? So the decision point question you might ask legitimately is, should we proceed with a project where we haven't got that element, those elements designed and scoped because of the risk associated with it? So if I was de-risking it in the future, I would be saying we shouldn't be proceeding with projects, small or big, where we're going to be carrying that amount of risk, because this is exactly an example of what happened. I just checked the timing, Councillor McTamney, in terms of that. The approval for the tender for the pipeline was in 2022. So it's taken all that time, it's not because people aren't doing anything, it's taken all that time to get the design process and the procurement process to a point for all those other elements, and all those costs have changed. And the rural water schemes, agreed in 2020 to what they thought, In 2022, I'll say they agreed to, the, what was known at the time, which was about $19 million in 2022, that was agreed. And then, of course, we're seeing what's happened, because even then, those things weren't tendered. So my answer, councillor, would be that Donna and the team, which is why we've restructured in terms of making sure the scope element of that is within the same team now, that we don't go down that pathway. And also, my oversight, your oversight would be the same. You can legitimately ask the question, where are we in the procurement stage for a particular significant project? That would be, I don't know whether George wants to add to that or.
There is one distinct difference here. If we were building a library, a road, a toilet, and we get to this juncture, an impossible juncture, we can say no. At the moment, if we say no, we go to court. We are neutered in our ability to negotiate in the three waters, and that's why it's not the staff's fault. And even the 90%, they want to come back at 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. We're sitting back around the table with, we go to court or we don't go to court. That's the only two options we have. And that is the impossible situation. It is not fair.
I suppose I was pointing out, Your Worship, though, that we can have better control of that destiny in terms of being able to communicate around true costs and things. If we don't put ourselves in those situations where significant components of a particular project are untendered and not available to us, because that's where we can come a problem. So that would be the answer.
So next question, Dave.
Well, that sparks a question to myself then, going forward, of bring a big project to our table and we read it and it looks right. Do I then put in my own head and put 20% on top of it? It's like.
Through you, Chairman. So just to confirm what Steve was saying, with our internal structural change, we've the scoping and the planning of projects are being really scrutinised now, because we have the team in place to do that. It's the first comment. We're also working collaboratively with our operations team, where we now, so from projects from now forward with our new structure, we meet monthly with Three Waters team, fortnightly with our transportation team, to talk through any fish hooks, any red flags, any issues that we think could potentially occur whilst we're scoping and planning these projects, to factor all that in. One comment I would make, in particular with this type of project though, is yes, just going back historically, and I can't answer because I wasn't here, but historically, if we had gone out with a one procurement approach, what you would have done is that you would have delayed starting the project, because there's no contractor that I know would hand on their heart commit to a tendered price, knowing full well in 18 months' time they wouldn't commence. So in this instance, that's an example where realistically I would not have recommended to have done that for this project, because of the risk you have. They just wouldn't. They would put a huge disclaimer in there. Or you could have got everything scoped and ready, and we could have potentially looked at parallel running it, as in building the treatment plant whilst the pipes are being laid. But again, delaying that, you wouldn't have, your cost for your pipe would have increased by now. I'm very confident of that, because it's 2 years since it was approved.
Councillor McDermott.
To add on, sorry.
Thank you.
To add on, Donna, when we project of this magnitude are scoped and estimated preliminary, those are done from preliminary design, and those estimates are usually minus 30% to plus 50%. Correct?
Yes, I'm just coming back to sort of a question. I'm looking at the project in hindsight now, and talking about the two stages, the pipe work and the treatment stuff. But I'm thinking, I'm just having observed it all the way, it actually could have run concurrently.
That's what I was saying, in hindsight, parallel could have been an option, but
the whole tender, and so for projects of this scale, everything should come in the future.
Yes, and just to back that up, that was what I was meaning, that we could have done something parallel.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so critical for our team, our new formed team, to be working closely with the operations team, which we do, because we have to get the buy-in from the whole organisation to actually achieve that. You are correct, that could have been a decision made a number of years ago.
It's irrelevant.
Okay, team. Firstly, thank you, crew. I want to reiterate the trap that we've been put in is not one that you set. It was set from Wellington, and it's an insidious position. We appreciate the pressure that we're all under. And I think, could you please hold and hover though, because I suspect there'll be questions as we go into discussion. And now you want to speak, Linda? All right, why don't we?
Sorry,
You know, someone will do a point of
just to
order. I mean, no
clarify,
doubt.
the Wellington aspect and perhaps that date that has now put pressure on the project, that came out of the Queenstown crypto outbreak. So we've got one plant, Topeka West, that doesn't have protozoa protection. It's our only one. And so all councils who don't have that protection in place received a letter from Te Mara Arawai. We got it in November. We haven't responded yet. We have till the end of this month to give them our plan for upgrading Topeka West or providing that protection. Our response is obviously greenfield, and Te Mara Arawai are aware of that, not in a formal sense yet, but we have to tell them by the 30th of June what we're doing and have it in place by 31 December. We will get relaxation on the delivery date, I feel. It's only that one plant that's got that pressure on it.
No, thank you, team. Matters now open for discussion. Councillor Bolwell.
Again, to move things along, we've got the recommendation that we receive the Greenfield Project additional funding.
Well done. I'll second that to speed things up considerably. All those in favour? Those against? On to number 2 or 3. What's your thoughts, team? Councillor
Having
Hammond.
a conversation.
What's that?
You made the statement, we're going to have discussion.
Yeah, that's what I said. What's your thoughts, team?
And then you go straight into recommendations.
No, sorry, I better clarify that. We've done recommendation 1. We're now moving on to recommendation 2 or 3 for discussion.
So my comment and discussion, and this is obviously in no way directed to the staff, but some of us sitting around this table have been here a while, got to take a bit of responsibility too. We've allowed this turn of events where we're at the 11th hour. If we don't approve this, where does that leave our communities? If we do accept it, we're looking at a projected rates increase per unit of $1,000. We're going to create a house of cards. Those water scheme committees are like a cooperative. They're all in together. The biggest consumer in my district gets 125 units. If I was someone on that thing paying $125,000, I'm going to be first out. When people like that start, that makes it dearer on everyone else. That unit rate goes to $1,100 or $1,200. Then it has a snowball effect. So it's so frustrating. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't here. We are going to create a house of cards. If we say they can't legally pull out, well, we can't fight with 20, 30, 40 people.
Who was the next one? I did say someone. Councillor Grant.
Through you. I'm not sure how I think about this, but if I think you have to go with recommendation 3, because I look back on a lot of the non-compliance, and it's been with a lot of it has been record taking, and if this helps with that, half of our probably non-compliance, I would think, over the years has been poor record taking or no record taking. So if Fibre sorts that out, it's worth every penny spent.
Brent, sorry, Councillor Mackie.
So, through the chair, so you've laid a pipe down beside this main pipe. Now, if we voted for the first one, 2, what happens to that pipe? It's redundant, it's not used, is it?
Yeah, it will still be in the ground. It's not being used at the present if we're not going to fund that. But
But if we
It will
don't
be on
go
the
for,
ground and it might be used in the future when we go for the pilot. We'll have that option. We'll still have that structure in the ground to be used in.
how many $1,000s were spent in putting that pipe in?
Oh, I don't have number on top of my head, but it must be near to 50K.
So from my perspective, the first thing that's really weighing heavily on me is this is the last time that we as a political arm will have an input into this. We make a decision today, it's no use, and then we'll correct it or we'll modify it. We might get to go at the 90% when it comes back, if it does. But really today is the last day. And over the last 4 days since I became aware of it, I've been talking to consumers that are saying that they cannot sustain it at 1,000 plus. I talked to a guy yesterday on 60 units and he's telling me the sheep and beef. And as Councillor Herbert said, his concern was you start thinking where this area is. There's a lot of tree fellas up there that they're $1,000 a unit for something they don't use. House of Cards is really looming large in my head that you've got dairy boys up in Clyde with big numbers. You got forestry, and also you got sheep and beef. Are they going to be the last men standing? Might be a bit dangerous. They might want to be first out the door. This is the last time we can do anything about it. We are at the moment making a decision that I believe consigns many consumers to an untenable financial position, and it doesn't only go to the rural. Rural we can quantify on a rate of $1,000 plus. You've got to remember that 17% of the project is to Lawrence. Lawrence is distributed over all urban districts. It will put another 0.6% rate rise to every urban consumer in the district, pretty much. It's a rule of thumb. That we went.
Through you, the Chair, just another, so yes, you mentioned about the negatives associated with the units. One of the benefits is that because of the capacity that we're going to provide, we did some calculations and we could potentially do another 1,500 units, which will help to ease those potentially.
Sorry, can I hold back because I was right in the middle of that, and that's a tangent. Because if we have to go about the potential for the units to rise, in this environment, you tell me who's rising. The dairy boys ain't going to take it. The forestry boys definitely aren't. Any sheep and beef ones here hungering for more units at 1,000? This is the last chance, and we've got a responsibility on us, and I don't honestly believe we have got the tools to make a prudent decision. The toolbox is sitting in Wellington. As a council, like every council, we've been neutered in our ability to genuinely negotiate. And I see this, that even with that 10%, it's just like, that could come back and we'll just be back here sucking our thumb, unable to really make a decision or go back. So I've got a cunning plan. I do not intend to sit here making a decision today that I know from the number of consumers that I talked to yesterday is untenable. I said, can't do it, not going to do it. This situation has been placed on us and it's rendered us powerless. We need to let the matter lie on the table today, and we refer the matter to Minister Simeon Brown for direction on how we are meant to negotiate and move forward from this situation. Because the toolbox is up there, all the ability to negotiate is up there. It is not stopping. I am not saying for 1 minute we stop the project, but I say that we take the time to ask the Minister what the heck we're meant to be doing. Because once we say yes, that's off the table. And that is, if I can reserve my right to put that as a recommendation at the point when we get to that, but I'll go around the question.
Yes, we really need to do something about this, and now really drastically, because this is horrendous, and I'm not getting at the staff in any way. As I say, you've put forward and answered a heck of a lot of questions, and everybody's put a heck of a lot of work into it. Can I just question, what did you say it would put on to Lawrence Urban?
So originally it was 17% of the project, which went just over $70 for every urban rate. Yeah, how we spread it districtised. So I'm picking up the original 17, the original was $70. and the cost increase is $25, something like that, which equates to about 0.7% increase in rates. That was my rule back of the postage stamp calculations. But there is an implication across all of urban and the rural Clinton Clyde line.
So can we actually get somebody down here and get them face to face with us and say, look here? Because, I mean, this is something we have been trying to fight and work our way through. And a lot of the public out there don't even realise how hard we have tried it all the way through the three waters and how many times we've got people down here, etc. We need to really, really get into them and get them down here and front up to us, plus all our users, and get them in the room and say, well, what are you going to do about this for all our ratepayers?
So for transparency, so Monday I met with MP Joseph Mooney and then MP Mark Patterson. The general consensus was that I didn't stand much chance of getting Minister Brown down, but then who knows? It was just they're pretty busy. Could you do it? But then we hadn't slapped an ultimatum on them either. But so short one, initial indications, but that's only been 2 days in request with no ultimatum. Because how could I without knowing where my councillors stand?
But getting all the ratepayers behind us as well. And
I've certainly talked to the committee chairs and other consumers, and I haven't had any pushback yet. Councillor, where was I? Did Councillor Payne followed by Makatamani, and then was that either Phelps or it was Phelps?
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, this is I totally endorse what you have said, what Councillor Herbert said, where I was going perhaps a little bit too early on. But hey, I'm just thinking now though, I mean, what if we go to Sydney and we do this, what you suggested, what's a delay look like for us? What does that look like? How much
have all the
cost
answers.
us? And what's the inflation look like? There's so many other questions firing in.
I'm not suggesting we delay it, Ken. You know, like I would certainly be wanting an answer back from the minister within a week.
Right.
And if nothing else, it makes them realise the untenable situation we're in.
Just for clarity, Your Worship, because I need to understand what you're suggesting, what does it mean for the LTP? So when you say lie on the table, we still have to get in the next 2 days a decision from the council on what funding and therefore what unit rates are to be applied to the budgets. And at the moment, the unit rates aren't changing for years 1, 2, and 3 under the current proposal, in even with the additional $5 million. And so lying it on the table can relate to, hey, we're going to make a decision not to proceed with the project for the moment, and we need to factor in whatever costs, day rate costs associated with that side of things, which we can do. But we still need you to say, what are you actually funding? Are you funding no change to the LTP for the 10 years? Or are you saying we'll fund as what was proposed that includes the provision for the $5 million, but the only thing we're doing is stopping the project at the moment when you are talking to Wellington? So we need to know what you are doing relating to the LTP as much as whatever decision you're making relating to the actual project.
And I know that's the conundrum, but this is the last time we get a chance. If we succumb to this pressure, we're consigning consumers to a cost that they say they can't pay. Which one's the worst? Are we not able to put the proviso that we proceed? How do we get around it? I am not prepared with the information I've got, with the lack of ability to genuinely negotiate. We're just going to sit here and suck our thumb every time this comes to us and go, yep, because we can't go to court. Yep, no, you make it 10 million. No, make it 20 million. Not you, the situation and the tender price. They know they can put anything in, and if we say no, we're off to court.
Through you, Chair, I mentioned earlier that currently the contract is locked in with the rate, which is very, very agreeable, and that was the reason why we have decided at this point in time not to go out to tender. So that rate is a very agreeable rate.
But the rate consigns them to $1,000 plus. Does the house of cards effect? The rate might be great, but the outcome ain't. And we've got a responsibility as politicians to protect the public. It's just, this is the ludicrous dilemma that they leave us in, and the only way I can see it is to go back to the minister. If he knows everything, what's your thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so just, we didn't have the ability, like, and the same as the councillors, you're thinking of trying to think of solutions. So it's no blame on anybody for the suggestions and the solutions, Your Worship. But obviously, like we haven't been able to tell you what are the consequences. The paperwork we did was just a quick rush around what that might be. But let's try and think of the risks associated with one course of action versus the risk of another course of action. So one course of action is the suggestion, and at the end of the day, you can approve an LTP as per what it's got in here, and it doesn't make any difference because years 1, 2, and 3 hasn't changed, right? The thing that locks you in is approval of the funding for the tenders that we have got. That locks you into certain things. Okay, so they're two different things.
Yeah.
Right. So if we go to the consequences of what you're suggesting, which is put a halt on the existing project, pending a discussion with government. Okay, the risks associated with that are we have to, if we are going to proceed, we would run the risk of additional costs over and above the $5 million from the procurement process, because we might need to restart that process. We might get
For a 2-week delay.
Oh my God.
well, I mean, what are you, well, I mean, when you say a 2-week delay, do you honestly believe the government is going to tell you in 2 weeks your solution or our solution? I'm not getting at us. I'm just saying, do we think the government's tell us in 2 weeks the solution to the problem of the $5 million? That if there was something coming through, I would suspect that the negotiations would take a lot longer than 2 weeks associated with it. So I'm just trying to highlight to you that what we're effectively doing is saying we need help. We need to ask from different sources, and in between times we can't lock in the contract. It's got to be held, right? There are consequences to that, which suggests that we might be spending more than the $5 million. Alternatively, there's a potential that someone might come through with some additional dollars to offset that more than $5 million. But that's my quick understanding of what that risk would be. Versus, there's another risk. Okay, so there's the $5 million which we describe. We talk about $1,000 putting everybody off. Well, the $1,000 doesn't occur until later. We certainly hit 960 in year 4, but like a lot of things, the other side of the coin is you've got 3 years to try and sort something out, but you have locked in because you've built it, right? I accept that you've built it. You've locked in the $5 million. You know that there's going to be a cost coming up after year 4 or in year 4 that we hadn't previously accepted, and you've got 3 years to try and sort out a solution to that. Worst case being what you see before you is what you're going to get with the problems, right? But they are the two pathways that I see, and that's just trying to think of that. There might be others, but in generic terms, they are the two risk pathways you're dealing with, right? That's what I'm thinking. So you can make your calls around what that is.
But Steve, my point is that today is my last chance. This is it, and I'm not willing to do that. So people come to this and said they can't. So I'm not willing to do it. And that's the dichotomy. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. We're right back to where we are. But at least to go to the minister, he's done a deal with Auckland. He's not even dealing with us. Sorry, Councillor McAtamaney, and then I'll just head down the line.
Yeah, a couple of comments here. I'm agreeing possibly with the CEO, and when it comes to this water rate in the future, we've got to pull every single lever for those on the Greenfield scheme to reduce those rates. But speaking against the mayor, I'm struggling to see basically what we're asking the government for is money. Effectively, we've seen the budgets, we've seen their attitudes to future spending. I imagine every single council in the country will have a $5 million plus blowout on a water project at present. it's just not, if there is going to be alternative funding, it's just not going to happen in the short term.
I think it started with Councillor Mackey and went down. You had your hand up?
No, I didn't, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Ludeman then went down.
Well, I kind of agree with councillor McAtemney. I would be really not in support of stopping the project for all, when we've got to get our consents passed and everything, and it could blow the project down more. Instead of being the 5.4, it could be goodness knows what. So I don't support that, but what I do support is actually still lobbying the minister and actually definitely following a process there and having discussions as a council with the minister. We haven't actually invited him as a council yet. So actually formally, the council inviting him to meet with us, whether it be via Zoom or in person, and actually, so still having the conversation with the minister, but I don't believe we should be stalling the project in the meantime.
Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was a bit stiff holding my arm here all that time. Yeah, there's been some good fruitful conversation coming out of here with some of the stuff that Donna was saying and what she, the changes that the council staff have been making, and there's been some obviously good learning curves. Well done, Donna. And regarding the eye-watering figures, though, that our primary industries are going to be facing, it's unprecedented, and we all know about it. It's not on. And taking on board what Steve's saying, and for the purpose of the council to function, we need to be making a decision. And we're talking, and the latest bit of information Jules has given us this morning, it isn't going to change within the first few years. So how can we, is there anything we can do, guys, around that year 3? Like, what, have you got a white rabbit we can pull out to keep that rate for longer than just that year 1 and 2, like, what can we do? Can we do some more work on that?
Well, through your worship, I mean, there's a raft of things that you can explore. So, we all know capacity and in that. So one of the priorities might be how might you expand users to be paying for it. So you would be focusing on that. That's one thing you can do. Secondly, the government is about promoting contributions to and diverting funds to Three Waters projects. So, there are potential opportunities through those funds to be applying for them and see where they can be applied. We've got one at the moment that's currently sitting there relating to another project. Depending on where that project goes, again, that's something that might be available. So, that's the point, is that at the end of the day, what's the worst case? At least you know what the worst case is. It may not be palatable, but it gives 3 years to have a look at doing something. And that's the challenge. We don't know. Right, well, 3 years. If the water safety plans come through, 12 months. What happens if we're a different entity and a different CCO with other people? How does that get absorbed? We don't know. But you got to remember, the LTP is based on us going it alone. And we've said we can't go it alone. It's another example of going it alone, what it means to farmers, urban consumers. And, we sit here and we keep telling everybody we don't believe it's sustainable anyway. This is another example where we're saying, but it's not happening in year 1. In year 4, it starts getting the unsustainable aspect of it. And our job, through advocacy, through actions, through whatever else we do, through the fact we say, what's our plan to not go it alone, and how does that impact on those things, including these unit rates and bits and pieces, right? So those are all things that you would be looking to do over the next 3 years.
The other thing that, so I know we've applied to raise our debt ceiling. Well, it's not going to take us long to get there. We keep getting gems like this tossed in our laps. Yeah, we're in between a rock and a hard place, I'm afraid, but
I'm not sure whether it was councillor Voivuela, councillor Catherine, it was just councillor Catherwood, councillor Kennedy.
I just wanted to comment earlier and then, Ryan, you've thrown quite a spin on the whole thing. Been thinking about, but a bit more, I just want to get your head around clarity of the opportunity for, if I had this example of a water scheme user that had 100 units and they can wiggle out of that, the compounding effect of that is phenomenal. And the last man standing will be those that are probably in the urban situation, which will then compound right across the whole district below we harmonise it. I just wanted to, where are we at legally? Where are we at? People getting off their water. Where are we? Where are we at? Like, if they can wiggle out, if I was a 100 unit user, and I'm seeing my water rate go up from $30,000 per annum to operate my business, current economic climate, and I see it in year 3, and we talk about pushing it away, but I can calculate in my head that's going to cost me 100 nicker. And I can't find 70 nicker in my business, so I'm in big trouble. So then I'm going to go, right, I can sink a bore, 70 nicker, and look after myself. I'm paying back my investment within 1 year. I'm out of here. And then that leaves that house of cards, last man standing, and that brings down the whole house. Because we're supplying that over into Lawrence. I just want to know where we're at legally. Can they get it? Because we've done these calculations on delivering so many units. Others come along, great, we've built an extra capacity. No one's turning up to say that capacity is $1,000.
So just an answer, I mean, it's not, yeah,
It doesn't change the decision.
I understand the question, and the question's been asked before, but my answer would be it's not helpful to discuss the legal aspects of that because it needs to be looked at in context. For every one legal pathway, there's another legal pathway that's open to council. So, councils can protect their revenue sources through many different ways and that. And so what we don't want to do, in my view, is just go out there with one particular answer that says a consumer can do this, right? Because it promotes the suggestion that that's what they can do without considering that actually there's many other provisions that council can enact that protects its revenue sources. And so whilst there is that risk element, even there are options we have available to us, even if somebody exits the scheme, to still achieve revenue from people. And then you're getting into things that you don't, on my view, is you don't need to get into the detail of all those things. It's just that, just as we have to start, in the past we didn't have to worry about it, but these become a risk. We start having to look at it. We need to look at it across the board, and we might need to put in provisions and enactments to protect ourselves as well. Those are all available to us, but we don't have to debate those at this particular time.
So I'm going to councillor Kennedy, and then I'm probably looking for either first-time callers or a recommendation.
You don't want a recommendation?
Yeah, no, that's what you've got.
It's a project we've started. We have to finish the project, and that's all there is to it at this stage. The trouble is that we're mixing two things here. We're here for long-term plan to finish the project. Let's get our project finished. I know it's well over. And yes, I can hear everybody out there screaming. Our ratepayers and that have been screaming for a long time about our water around our districts. What have we done? We keep adding on more to our budget. This doesn't comply, that doesn't comply. It's legislation, that's fine. So let's deal with the long-term plan and finish the one big project that's always been there. And I think I will shift over to Clydevale. I'll get some good drinking. What our ratepayers have been screaming at us for is to lobby government, lobby this water entity, that decides that what we're going to have, because we haven't done this. We have talked about it, we've whispered it, but we haven't. Get our long-term plan out of the way, do what our ratepayers and everyone out there needs. I mean, I know we're only a little piece of this pie, because it's the whole of New Zealand, but how about we stand up? Get out there and let's have our say for a change instead of, oh, we've just got to comply. Yeah, we do, but no one has held this entity to thing yet to say that, well, you know, you've put it out of our reach. We can't comply with you anymore. That's enough. So we're stopping here, but let's finish this project for our lovely communities. And we have 3 big water schemes going on to this. And I hope, sitting at the PCG meetings and everything, that, you know, that there's not going to be that argument that we can't comply this time.
So I've got a mover, I need a seconder. Seconder, councillor.
Sorry, the motion is that we finish the project.
Which dollar value?
We
2 or 3?
We better put the fibre connection in.
So
Because
that's
then we
3.
get the proper numbers. Yeah.
So I've got a mover going number 3, and I've got a councillor Ludeman with their hand up, so I've got a mover and a second, the matter's open for discussion. Councillor Bowell.
Just for a start, I have a question. How many units do the Tuapeka and the 2 water schemes, how many units of water is sold today?
It's on this spreadsheet.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
So the number is 3868. So that's the current rural water units that are sold across the three water schemes. So 3,900 if you round it to the nearest 100.
And there's possibility of 1,500 extra.
Across the whole greenfield scheme.
Scheme.
Like we did a calculation of breakdowns if you want us. So you could potentially do an additional, right?
It's more than you could.
Yeah, conservatively, we could potentially do additional 300 for Balmoral 1, 979 for Balmoral 2, 243 for Tuapeka East and West, and we didn't include Lawrence because we believe that's metered at the moment. Limited?
On demand.
On demand, I'm sorry.
Does that also, does the pipeline also open up areas that currently aren't serviced by rural water schemes? Does it go through a new country, as it were?
Not really, it's through you, your worship. It sort of connects the existing network, so it goes to the main reservoirs of the existing schemes. So it doesn't really open up a new area.
Thank you. And well, now that I've asked some questions, I'll just speak briefly to this as well. I support the recommendations for the motion as it's proposed. I think we have to crack on. We can't just faff around and go and talk to ministers in Wellington. We might as well buy lotto tickets then if that's the case. We're going to wait for decisions there. So yes, we go and talk to ministers, but we do this as well. Thank you.
Councillor Herbert.
Just a quick question. So can you remember the people in Lawrence, will they pay 2-unit rate or will they pay a proportion? What will they pay, sorry?
So through you, your worship, the way the urban works is the costs for all the urban go together and are combined, and then they pay an on-demand or a restricted urban water rate.
They'll get equivalent to 2 units a day.
They'll get an on-demand connection, so that can be more than 2 units a day. If they're getting that, they should be metered. So they're using heaps of water. At the moment, we're only metering our commercial properties, not residential.
And through your worship, I mean, the question around, that funding policy, how that applies, I mean, for the next 3 years, if you say yes to this, you might be re-looking at that. You might be saying, hang on, we need to have a look at what how that relationship works between the urban and the rural water scheme contributions and that. So, that's another area you might consider.
Councillor Herbert. You're done?
Graham.
Yeah, no, excuse me. Councillor Herbert, you're done, so Councillor Graham.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think we don't really have an option. I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah, we don't. What was I going to say?
Who would know?
I suppose worst case scenario would be good reverse mortgage, but I don't know. There was something relevant too. I'll come back to you.
Councillor Payne.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to support the motion too, just show my support. I think, there's just one wee thing I would say about Councillor Kennedy is that I don't think it's fair to say we haven't lobbied government. There's been an immense amount of lobbying and working on water for quite some considerable time now. And whilst we still need to do more lobbying and plenty of it, it may be that we could do a bit more with the current government. So that was just my wee addition to it.
Yes, so if I can say, obviously, I'm beyond frustrated at this, and after 5 years of lobbying, and I will say that I'm proud to say that no council's lobbied as hard for the government in the South Island as this one. I know for South Island, no one has lobbied harder over the 5 years. But for me, this is our last chance. The deal with Auckland that Minister Brown has already done, I couldn't find one detail out about it. The fact that we've only had since Friday to try and tie anything together, it's not your or our fault. But how the hell are we meant to get to the only person that might have a solution in 5 days? It's an impossibility. So then we're left back in the neutered position of, I'll go to court. Is that, so I talked with many of the consumers, and they gave me, but if you do that, my business can't sustain it. I go bankrupt. Am I prepared to fall into line with Minister Brown's system and consign a number of people that I really like and respect to financial hardships? I am willing to stand up and say no. Now, yeah, I know all the implications and I know everything. And it is a bit of a pseudo vote because I can see which way it's going. But I'm not prepared with the information we've got, and actually not so much the information as the absolute inability to do anything, to not stick up for the people that have told me, you do that and I'm under. Because I know that if he did that to me, how I would feel. Which leaves me with no other option than I'm going to vote against it. I know it's not a political decision I would usually make, but this is the stupidity of Three Waters. I will reserve the right after this to do another because I want to test the feeling of the group as to how we lobby the government as of tomorrow, today, to whatever. Because this is just a bloody ludicrous situation. Councillor Barron.
Thank you. A question for clarification, because I'm not in this space from when it was originally mooted. The 19.8 million that was approved originally for this budget, did it have the water rates at the $300 or $400 per unit?
Simon, you had it at 463.
Yeah, that number though, that first number I quoted was back in 2020. So no, I can't recall. I'm guessing about $600.
Yeah, for the 900. So a decision was made, and at that time, it was known that at 19.8 million, water rates were going to be $600 a unit, and that was
also based on a lower interest rate in the council fees.
Through you, Your Worship, there's a whole lot of other costs with Three Waters that happened since then. And I just wanted to point out too that in our consultation document, we projected at the 19.8 that people on these schemes would be paying $905 plus GST for their water rate in year 3. That was out for consultation.
okay. So people knew that.
But this is just recent consultation.
Oh, recent. So it's not the 5 million that's created this.
It's a combination of factors.
It's not that.
5 million's around $100 extra. Yeah, the rest of the costs are not just the capital cost. There are other costs and other changes that we've made in the last few years as well.
So if you go to a minister or the government, they're going to say, well, you got it all wrong at the start. What did you do, you fella? You stuffed it up. You should never have gone ahead with this, and now you're leading to us because you've overcommitted. That's how I would. If someone come to me, I'd say, hang on, you didn't do your sums right at the start. No, I think you might get rebuffed.
Councillor Barron, the reason why the sums aren't done right is because the sums can be anything. They know that it can be anything because if we don't take it, we're like this, going back to court. We cannot negotiate. That's where the system's wrong. No, I do not believe that we, the staff, or anyone, have made a mistake. The system is making the mistake for us. Have we exhausted it and we're ready to put to a vote? Councillor Grant?
Yeah, no, I remember what I was.
Well done.
Look, this has got to go ahead, and as Jules and Steve said, we've got 3 years to lobby and do what we can. We don't want to be have a Monterey Bridge here, you know, that wasn't set idle for 10 years or whatever it is. I think we've just got to do it and then do our homework and lobbying and whatever in that interim period.
Right, that'll bring the discussion to a close, so everyone knows what the motion was. Move Councillor Kennedy Volwheeler, Ludeman, Kennedy Ludeman. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Your Worship.
All those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, Your Worship.
Was
Put
that
your hands up for that.
Catherwood, Mackie, Herbert, myself? That's someone's abstained. Has anyone else? And Councillor Barron's abstained. Okay, so that's moved that one. That's passed. Thanks very much, team. Lunch.
No, excuse me.
Well,
You talked about
Oh,
making
yeah,
another motion,
geez.
and I would like to see another motion.
yeah. So I'll just to test so that I know where we're going, because on this specific issue, we need to immediately lobby specifically Minister Brown for how we're meant to deal with this situation. What is his direction that he gives us for this situation? Because the system that presently they are insisting on is untenable. How you put that? Who's going to put that into a recommendation?
Can I just add to that? We obviously lobby Minister Brown. We should be lobbying Minister Patterson. Mooney, no, all in the one, all together. Minister Mooney, and
we've got 5.
we need to be lobbying all our local MPs plus and keeping them all in the loop together, because you'll have more traction if you're bringing them all together, because one might help push the other
There
along.
was a suggestion that there's a conglomerate of rural MPs. That was where I was told that I should.
I do think you need to, well, obviously, Mark Patterson is rural as well, so you've got to do that, so not just Simeon Brown.
No, well, he's the minister in charge, and then you know how it works at Radio Field. Councillor McAtee.
Just on that subject, Ali, I would ask specifically Todd McClay, being Minister of Agriculture.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
Because he is a senior minister, so he will have some leeway into Simeon Brown.
Sorry, that was that.
Your Worship, if it helps, I might refer you to the fact that I'm still halfway through writing something, but the submissions to the bill, where we would ask to speak to the submissions, where in the bill is talking about the water services plan and things like that, right?
Oh yeah, that could be an avenue.
The way that's being written at the moment, is highlighting the bits that they're missing, because I take the point where Councillor Barron was pointing out a particular thing around what are we actually asking for and all that. If you look at what the bill provisions are, there's some real weaknesses that show that the government in writing the bill doesn't understand how water and wastewater and that sort of things works, and they don't understand because their solutions are a particular solution that they're looking for, and they believe the bill will be the way to achieve that, and they don't understand how local government works around the ability of local government to actually achieve what they're thinking they're going to achieve. So, and why I say that, Your Worship, is that if I can write it in time and you can agree to it for tomorrow, because it needs to get in, that will be your starting point for further taking it to the ministers, because you'll be able to hit those points and go from there. that
So
would be
we
the
will be green lighting that one, so I'll pull back on the recommendation, but one that specifically that highlights this issue and demands that we get a meeting with Minister Brown. I say Brown because he is the minister and then you go down through it. So the other ones, you have to go to the minister specifically.
Yeah.
So are we happy? I'll pull back on that if it's, and then
And
we
your worship,
green
if
light
it's
that.
not, if it doesn't do the trick, you can still do another resolution to do what you're talking about as well. So you've got, because it's a 2-day thing.
Brilliant idea, Steve.
But I guess what, we did one thing there, we were one, good morning, Smoker. It's 1:30, okay, that's just less than half an hour to have lunch, but we're sort of gonna move along.